Call to order the meeting. Everybody coming out today is 2020. HALRB. Call the roll.
Okay. John Aiken. Omari Davis.
Here.
Robert Decca. Alex Foster. Carmela Ham.
Here.
Gray Hanley. Gerald Laporte.
Here.
Joan Lawrence.
Here.
Rebecca Meyer. Katie Myers.
Here.
Mark Turnbull.
Here.
Andrew Wenchel.
Here.
And Dick Woodruff.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Fantastic. Let's go through explanation of the public hearing procedures. Welcome to tonight's meeting. Effective September 1st. New state regulation now requires county board appointing commissions, including HALRB, of in-person quorum to conduct monthly business. HALRB hearings are provided in a hybrid environment, both in person and streamed online. Members of the public may attend and participate either virtually or in person. Members of the board and members of the public joining us this evening, please remember this meeting is available to stream from the county website via Microsoft Teams. There's also a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use. Members of the board, representatives, speakers, whose internet connectivity, please call back by phone. Please keep your device muted and video turned off until you're called to speak. For public speakers not sponsoring items on the agenda, pre-registration to speak online at today's hearing is required. Speakers are available at the front of the room for those in-person speakers. I'll call on you to speak after presentation of the agenda. Meeting chat is active for participants who are technical citizens only. It should not be used for discussion, public comment, questions about the agenda items, or request for more information. All public comments must be shared verbally during the public testimony period. All voting will be done by call. Lastly, today's public forum and will be posted to the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to agreement requirements. That let's review for approval of the April 2023. Are any questions or concerns about the hearing none, is there a motion to?
I'll move that the HALRB April 20. That's submitted.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Let's call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Ms. Ham.
Abstain.
Mr. Laporte.
Yes.
Ms. Lawrence.
Abstain.
Ms. Myers. Mr. Turnbull.
Yes.
Mr. Wenchel.
Yes.
And Mr. Woodruff.
Yes. That's a question.
Yes.
What vote do we need? Majority of those present voting. Got a lot of extensions.
That's a good point, Jerry.
I mean, per the bylaws, there is no requirement. I think it's a majority of those, like a majority, yes. Well, yes,
So
as
it's
long as we have a
5.
quorum, it's a majority of any of the votes.
So we're at 503. Doing my math, yes. Barely.
Very barely, right? Yeah, good question. Nate.
One more person.
No, yeah.
Everyone's vote counts.
Yeah. That we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any, there are 2 items. Questions or comment concerns? Hearing none, is there a motion to?
I move we approve the items.
Second. Please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Ham,
Yes.
Mr. Laporte,
Yes.
Ms. Lawrence,
Yes.
Ms. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull,
Yes.
Mr. Wenchel,
Yes.
and Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
Unanimous.
So those of you who are here for the consent agenda, you're welcome. Feel free to stay for the good time.
Thank you.
Chairman, can I raise a point of order? I'm John Reeder. I contacted you. I shouldn't make a public comment here. I was under the assumption that you had public comments at the commission meeting. Actually, every other advice. They have no public comment.
And based on the agenda online, there is an opportunity for general comments. You can comment obviously on any of the discussion. I didn't say, but I'm nothing. It's no general. But you are free, obviously.
Whether it's more than just this window. And I'm wondering if I need to read it into the record.
I already shared it with everyone, and I will also write it into the meeting minutes. But yes, your letter has been shared with everyone to be read before.
Okay. I do believe that it's in the wrong state. We should investigate. Those were original, they're much more like Craftsman Sears house windows. They made in the 30s and 40s, but about when windows began to mature. And the windows that we currently mostly are manufactured based on those rail sizes, size.
Yeah. Can we?
Thank you, sir.
Oh, look at it, I'm gone. I don't need a whole different meeting.
There'll be opportunity to comment after it's presented formally as well. So we can cover that.
Well,
Yeah.
it's
Be like,
people all made aware of it.
Yeah.
We gotta
Yeah.
do it. The entire building in the next 30 to 50 years, they will all be confronted with the original.
You're welcome
Yeah.
to speak as a public speaker after I've presented the item. We
Yeah.
haven't started speaking about the item yet.
Oh,
So you're welcome to have 3 minutes to speak once
Once-
I've presented, but
I
yeah.
thought you've already been approved.
Oh, no.
No,
that-
it's not on the
no,
consent agenda.
different one, so. We're on item 1720 right now.
We're on item 4.
Yes, we're about
Now
to
we're
start on the discussion.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
all
I'm
discussion.
glad we saw it. Place it.
No, we're
It's all right. Okay.
We're gonna do it right now. Hold tight.
Schools don't generally provide for. Have somebody who's here. I don't know that we want to get into general. I would have asked them to speak every.
We've never had a
Historic
public comment
preservation.
period like the county board does for general comments, because then that then also begs the question of allowing time to respond to that. Anyone who wants to speak on something that is advertised on the agenda can do so if they sign up, either in person or in advance. That's,
I mean, is there any reason why we couldn't do that if we chose to do it? That please.
the bylaws don't
I
talk
think we have
about,
to change our bylaws.
they don't talk about a public comment period in the existing bylaws. We're gonna mention bylaws a little bit later tonight about
Yeah.
something that we need to change there,
Yeah.
but if that's something you all want to entertain, then I think,
My question.
I think it would have to be in the bylaws. As long as I've been here and as long as I think the program has been around, I don't think there's ever been a general public comment for HLRB.
Not my.
Unless they did it in the very, very beginning, but I don't remember.
Responded to this question. Yeah.
There's not.
No.
We had feedback that people are having a hard time hearing online, so reminder to speak at the microphone so people can hear better.
You're out of my.
So
the
face-
bars
whoever's speaking face forward, I know we all have a tendency, I'm guilty of it too, to turn towards the screen. Just turn towards the table and then that's gonna pick up voices better. And everyone just talk a little bit louder than normal, that helps a lot. Having listened to DRC from home.
Got it. Got it.
Discussion?
Discussion agenda, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so our first discussion item is for window at 1720 Queen Street in the Colonial Village Local Historic. So Colonial Village was the first large-scale rental housing project in America insured by Federal Housing Administration. It had major influence on apartment design in the 1930s. It was meant to be a model for future projects. It was one of the first to apply innovative garden city planning concepts to low and middle income apartment complexes. These concepts include low density superblock development, clustering apartment units into spacious, richly landscaped courtyards, separating pedestrian and vehicle traffic, and using an interior green belt. The reason you haven't seen many applications in the past is because in 2015, the HLRB approved ACOA guidelines for window changes. And so as long as all the windows complied with those, you didn't have to see them. The one thing you did see most recently was an application for some historic park. So these are the 2015 design guidelines. However, the window that the complex has been using has been discontinued, and they have not been able to find a replacement that fits into these guidelines. And therefore, they have come to us, a number of the applicants, because now, whereas it was rental units, it's now condo units, they're privately owned. The applicants are able to apply for their own windows, and we have had some applications for different windows. So one of the applicants is applying for non-compliant windows. The contractor they worked with had said they were going to be compliant and have since not been, but at the same time, we've not found any others that are compliant. We informally reviewed 7 window applications or 7 window options last month and identified from them which you thought were going to be most appropriate to allow alongside the other existing windows. When the apartments were converted into condos, they already had lost their original windows and had been replaced by aluminium. So right now, any original windows are aluminium windows, and any new windows are vinyl. Per the design guidelines approved in 2015, we've also allowed for wooden windows. No one has applied for those. We wanted to make sure to retain the low-cost option. These windows, you'll see behind me, this is a sample of the window. The applicant is requesting to replace 8 aluminium windows with 8 vinyl earthwise double hung windows. The proposed windows have a single movable screen, which can move, slide up and down with a low profile channel. So the major visible difference appears to be the shape of the muntin, which in the 2015 design guidelines are shown in cross section as a trapezoid, because it would be just the wooden rectangle and then glazing, which would make it look like a trapezoid. However, this has kind of a more decorative muntin. Also, there is the distance between the glass and the edge of the frame is 3 inches, whereas in our approved design guidelines, we want 2 7/8 inches. And then I believe the other distance should be, or like within these dimensions. Style is 1 1/4, muntin width is 7/8, which is acceptable. The Historic Preservation staff recommends approval of this application submitted. The Colonial Village National Register of Historic Places nomination form describes the location, size, layout, and glazing pattern of the windows in the complex, but does not outline their material or structural dimension, which indicates that the fenestration pattern is character defining, but the window material details are not. Originally, Colonial Village was constructed as an affordable rental apartment complex, so the windows would all have been identical and then maintained and replaced by the same entity, creating a uniformity of appearance. The buildings in the LHD have been converted to condominiums, so given the varied ownership, visible uniformity is important to retain the aesthetic appearance of the buildings. The condo owners in the Colonial Village Board have not been able to find a window that fulfills the existing 2015 guidelines. Upon reviewing these window dimensions, it appears the difference between the range of measurements approved for the 2015 guidelines and this proposed window do not vary widely enough for the window to appear visibly different from the ground. Staff would prefer standard trapezoid muntins, but as the width matches the dimensions recommended by the guidelines, the added element should appear minimal. Additionally, the majority of the windows in Colonial Village are not visible from the public right-of-way, but only from privately owned land within the local historic district. And that is the end of the staff report. Then we invite the DRC to speak. I would note that we did receive a comment from Mr. Donahue, which you received by email, and will be written into the meeting. And the applicant is here for us whenever we're done with the DRC discussion.
the ERC is. Andy, do you have any comments?
Yes, I think the problem is, look at the window. There's an example. The buttons do not have anything like the normal profile. They're basically almost flat with glass. And that's caused by the fact that they use a very wide insulated glass. Vacuum, if you will. It's actually air. And buttons are false, of course. And it's the manufacturer's decision on the use of glass that's eliminated. If you look at it, real photograph, and you look at any of the previous windows we used, replacement, the buttons raise up from the glass in the traditional profile that narrows to the top, so it's almost kind of more like a pyramid instead of a flat trapezoid. And that's the reason I think that if you look at the windows that don't match, you can see how thin those windows buttons look. And that's partially the way that the buttons are.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, just to say, this is a 404 because it's the bathroom window. That is a 6, not 1-for-1, just in case you were worried that it was different.
Right, so that's the reason I suggested that. Coming out of DRC, that these windows are not going to appear like the other windows. They're going to appear much thicker than those windows, the buttons. And you're going to be able to see the difference if you want to have that. I think there are other manufacturers supply windows might be more expensive. But with modern windows, you can probably replace those, get a much better profile of the button. So if you want a thick button, or what appears to be a thick button, it doesn't. It's the fact that the button is basically almost flat with the glass and doesn't rise above it. That's the comments from yours.
We had a comparison to the.
Yes, so this is, should be 5/8 or 7/8, and that was, well,
That's right. Looks more like 7/8.
yes, I think it is 7/8, and that 7/8 was allowed. Mountain width is 7/8, yes, and the mountain width is allowed per the design.
So
7/8, these are 7/8,
Yeah.
same picture, and then the, well, when you say these are, you mean the existing?
the ones we just saw in the picture.
Oh, the aluminium, I haven't measured the aluminium.
We don't know what's in them. That's a
He-
pretty
he-
substantial loss of transparency
We have allowed it.
all the way around. It's a loss of a lot of glass.
Plus the depth.
The Serena mentions though, the design guidelines allow 7/8. I mean,
A range is allowed.
Right now, 3/4 to 7/8.
Existing guy.
Yeah.
It's been enforced for.
2015.
I will say, I think that my house, oh, for some reason, something. Style window. It's a wonderful window and they don't offer it. They're pretty hard to find. Just standard.
We invite the applicant to speak. Start to speak.
You know, I'm generally sympathetic to cost issues. That has never been concerns. in my, you know, it's not, and I probably,
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just have some talking points. And last year in September, we were made aware that the only windows that were approved in this case, the ones that are now in the community, were no longer manufactured by the company part-time. Well, the HOA manager, he went through a pro search to look for like, you know, the nearly window that he can find that has the specifications, but he did not find, like, none of the windows that he found met his specifications. No, even the Marvin or the part-time that they had. So only 3 of them made it through. And do you remember the last that we were of? 3 of them. And during that meeting, the only complaint was the earthwise window. The only complaint was the mounting, the design, but because the size actually fits the specification, which is in the 780s. So we feel it's unfair for our window to be disapproved based on a parameter which is. If our window is disapproved, we are being left with 2 Marvin and paradigm. And that is like, can be a problem for not only us, but some other members of the community. The gentleman said, Marvin is a very good window. We would want anyone to want that window. Some of us is really out of our pocket, rich out of pocket. And nonetheless, also paradigm window is a manufacturer that was previously approved, but went out of production. So we know it was out of production, the current window. It is also a small company in Maine, and it's not 100 window, it's not even a top 100 window manufacturer. This one is, and Marvin as well, which makes it unreliable, potentially unreliable. The previously approved window was only available for 7 years. If Paradigm was out of business or stops production, it would be a burdensome to go through the same process we are going now with the HOA, with you, with the schedules of being, I don't know how many years, because the product can't go out of production. As I said, with the market, they need a very good material and quality window for some younger families like us, or like retired people with less like income or something like that. It's kind of hard to get. But as well, as I said, we appreciate that any other people that want the Marvin window be able also to put it because it's good quality, it's excellent quality. And it wouldn't be also responsible for the HOA board to pay such a premium to install these windows in the common areas, because ultimately we are the ones who have to pay for our condo. We have spoken with numerous members of the community, and which have shown them our window, the earthwise window, and they appreciate it. They haven't pushed back against this window because we have shown how it works, how it's very easy to clean, it's not heavy, and yeah. So thank you for your time, and
Thank you. None for the board.
No, we just had that public comment. No.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if the gentleman wanted to speak.
Sure, I mean, if you would like to, just, yes, 3 minutes.
I wrote you all lived in this country. I know some of the history of the different windows that have been approved. Let me just read this verbatim. It's easy to do that. I write in support of my neighbor's bid to have non-compliant windows installed in their unit. There are at least 2 other units in the village that fit the description, although Chuck Bond suspects no definitive survey has been done. One of these units had HPP approval, much as I believe Eric Locken does. Doing any type of home improvement is not intuitive for most homeowners, even more so when not in a tangled, obscure regulation process. In this case, trying to write specs that would increase the market of available products that would come close to the existing appearance. It's much like throwing horseshoes close to the stake. Let's look at the stake. The current stake is a window that never should have been installed in these buildings. The developer chose the cheapest metal windows available. So much its reputation caused it discontinued manufacture within a few years. Hence our continuing dilemma. Over the years, there have been very few approved windows because quality manufacturers did not reduce structure to your required specifications. Now we are trying to incrementally increase that structure to increase available products. I believe this initiative is flawed from its inception in this case. What stake should we be pitching? That target would be based on the original window dimensions installed in the late 30s and early 40s. But the point of historic preservation was to maintain or replace with original vision. I think this board has lost sight of this. I'm guessing about a third of the windows at CB3 have been replaced. The board would expect the original over the next 30 years. Most of the villages, even those already replaced, considering a 30-year lifespan, would conform to the original vision. Modern windows matured post-war, and the Sears Craftsman houses is probably where that was most refined, and that was in the same time span. I believe this policy would provide a plethora of uniform products. If you consider this course, the mismatch of replaced windows would be correctly uniform. Historic things can improve. In conclusion, I would suggest basing appropriateness by comparing minute differences to a completely inappropriate window for the sake of uniformity will not result in historic correctness. Change course and pursue original vision. Set standards for the remaining 2/3 of the windows to be historically correct, and those that have been replaced will catch up. If you do this, my neighbor become the last of the approved inappropriate windows, and the board can plot a course for successfully restoring these buildings to their original. So you start over now. We have a window. We got a bunch of inappropriate windows. There are pictures in some archives, in some architectural libraries. I have this book here that lists one of those, right? And it's about, I can set it up there and if you like. I'll leave it here for Serena if you check it out. It discusses the architect. It discusses the time frame. It discusses the reasons the place is historic. One of which, it wasn't the first garden style apartment. It was the first commercially successful garden style apartment. So it becomes the first existing current built in Tuna. This was built by a special architect, maybe, but it has its significance in the fact that it's the first garden style apartment.
Thank you. You're at time now.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'll be on the way. Soon. I'll leave you that book, and you can maybe copy the pages and send them to them. Bibliography in the back would be pictures of the exterior of the buildings. You'd be able to extrapolate the sizes of the windows and the box, you know, as the building was built.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the board.
beginning, but so. No one has the original. So then we approved a set of guidelines. Placements, but no one can get.
Well, we don't know. I mean, based on the windows they have found, none of the 7 windows that they found meet the design guidelines. They only looked for vinyl, they didn't look for wooden windows. But I think they are trying to pursue like a more affordable.
When we created the specifications, did we know?
Believe so, and that's why there's a range, so that even though like they knew there was some windows that fulfilled it, there would be more.
And most people used a paradigm model that has since been discontinued, which is why people are having to come forward with things like this.
Okay, and that paradigm model, did it have a set of gauges?
Yeah, I met all this fun.
We stand with. We didn't approve, but I guess.
So
Selected though. We stand in that.
So I have updated the design guidelines or like with the recommendations, and then I've shared them with staff. And so once staff has looked them over, I'm going to share them with Colonial Village to make sure that they're comfortable with them. And I'm hoping to get them to you to update the ACOA design guidelines for next month, so July. And so with July, we would approve updated ACOA design guidelines, which would include an expansion or the dimensions for this would be included. But the only drawings I have are for this trapezoid.
And she wants to. She's asking, this is not one of the ones that. Preliminarily.
It was, except that you said if the muntin could be changed. These dimensions,
The
you were
muntin
fine
could be
with.
changed.
You said if the muntin could be a trapezoid, you will allow these to be approved.
Is that a possibility?
They're checked.
This one wouldn't be on the list. I'd be waiting.
Right, for
Because the muntin
ACOA.
can't be approved.
Right, which is why it's come for.
It can't be approved, not because it's too big, but because it's shaped.
Yes, from the drawing.
What's the guidelines say about it?
I don't think it does. It just has a drawing included in it. But I can.
I think it just has the range of dimensions.
But the new guidelines that. Process of being approved would say something about the shape. This one.
Now we
Is
know.
that correct? Is that a correct statement?
I think that the updated ones, I mentioned a trapezoid.
Okay, so we're about to approve guidelines that would make this.
No, you're only approving this one window. The guidelines are coming next month.
So this would be a special circumstance before you were to update and approve
That
guidelines.
sounds a little silly to approve one set of windows for one person and then approve guidelines thereafter. The rest of the building, but that doesn't make sense.
Debate the max, that's what was, pardon me, or that in the future, we have to do this all over.
Yeah, they just have to come to you.
Right, it just can't be an
It
easy.
would be a COA.
Right.
Every time.
And the same would happen currently with fiberglass, or any material that isn't, or clad. So Mr. Donahue submitted a window that you also saw, which was a much brighter white that was a clad window. But the style there was too big. Rail was too big. And so that was not included. And also the color was off. But so any fiberglass, clad, any other materials, unless we change the color.
Style were like.
It appeared that based on the number of windows that we.
Is it always?
I have not asked about cost.
So the style would be, would you say a trapezoidal style? facility say it needs to be. Traffic is what's going to traffic.
We approved this one. Seems to me that that sets a precedent so that anybody who doesn't want to follow the approved one just has to come to us. And how are we going to distinguish this set of circumstances from a person who comes months from now and says, this one be somebody else?
I think again, this window is only being recommended for approval because it does fulfill all the other guidelines that were identified as appropriate when you reviewed everything. And so this is the only changes that is the Mountain profile. And so I guess it would depend. And again, we do review everything on a case, just like any application. And so then it would depend on how many other variants it had to the approved guidelines.
How many total windows are in this?
And where are they located?
How many are on the front?
The front.
The three you can see from the front.
Front and back.
Are they the 6/6? Are they the 6/6?
Or the 6 panes,
The
on
6
6
panes.
panes.
Oh, well, this one is the bathroom and
Right.
and the kitchen is gonna be like this.
Okay.
This
Yeah.
is too small.
But on the
And the
front,
other
all
Oh,
6.
two.
Okay, so 2 of the ones on the front will be 6 and 6, and 1 will
And
be.
the other-
But yeah,
Okay. Yes. I think the problem with the window is the glazing again. I think I want to make clear that this with we would like to encourage windows going with insulated glass instead of a single pane. Makes a lot of sense if you can get the appearance. The problem with that particular window is, appears to be, at least to me, insulated glass is fairly thick, which tells me that it's probably air-filled as opposed to a narrower window, which is usually filled with argon, which is much more efficient. And they use the thicker window with the air, cheaper. Don't have to pay for argon, have some eventual problems. Windows, I'm suggesting, glazing is probably more insulated glass is more expensive. It's the issue. You're trying to, as was pointed out in the book there, you can see fairly clearly if you look closely. The buttons are fairly narrow, and it's typical of a wood window. That was a traditional window at the time this was constructed. Thank you. Oh, we've got low argon glass. I'm sorry, I missed. That's what they're saying. I still think the window doesn't fit, but I'm not sure how you're going to write the specs. Get that without going to.
sorry, I just, I'm excited.
So, oh,
It sounds like we're kind of at sort of impasse. I guess it'd be appropriate to do kind of straw poll. Or make a motion.
I just want to be clear, the crux of the issue
Measurement wise, everything is fine. On to the most.
The only place we have to mind is this section.
Yeah, I mean, the,
No.
Any
it is
kind
not.
of-
No.
oh, yes.
There's
The
no
only
like.
thing, I think
I don't really see
it is
cross
cross-section.
that.
Yeah,
So
so
like,
it shows this trapezoid.
I just don't. I don't see how that shows a pyramid. Like if I looked at that. I'd be honest.
Don't we allow simulated?
Yes, SDL are allowed.
Yeah, so if these had simulated buttons between the two layers of glass, there would be. They were within the dimensions.
We allow simulated divided line. We don't allow it,
Okay.
and we don't allow them. As they have to do.
They have
Okay,
to-
so they're on the
Yeah,
outside.
yeah, yeah.
They're just,
They're allowed to be. It has to have this exterior portion. It just allows for there to also be a space.
the fact that it would look like it was in between glasses.
Oh, okay, sorry. No, yes, no, this is just a spacer. It was just for.
So then of the 8 windows, only 3 are visible.
And then what about the windows on each?
Are they?
Just curious, are they?
In the
ones,
the
are they-
older version.
I don't know, but I must admit, and I think Michael will agree, we can't tell the difference. We actually need, when we approve these ACOAs, we need them to send us the before and the after pictures, because when we go, we can't tell. So, you can't, like, whether, I couldn't tell you whether they're aluminum or the new ones.
When are we gonna vote on the guidelines?
Next.
This month?
Yes. Want to try it? Paul?
Just try a poll. That way, I guess. I'll go. This is based on the dimensions and kind of things are for getting the right window to really fit. I'm inclined to approve this window as presented tonight, even though it's not for the guidelines. It's very close in the style. But I mean, the window we're talking about is a correct dimension. Profile is off, but profile mentioned there is kind of, it's not ambiguous, but it's not. It's so obvious.
Yeah, I would vote to support it. But having said that, I do think we have a bit of a double standard here. Because we sort of look at this with an eye toward the cost. And that's not something we ever have done with anything in Maywood. Where it's expected that homeowners buy the exact same dimensions of the windows they take out, and they be made of wood and all of that, and no one's ever really given a hoot about cost around this table about that. I have a little bit for homeowners who should cost the table, so that's why I will support this, but I don't think it's fair.
So I would support it, and I would also support the guidelines. I think with our specifications, it basically fits, and they're so vague that I couldn't really say that that doesn't fit this. So, I mean, I would almost argue that it fits. But I also think you're looking at placement. It's not like someone's taking out original wood. Already allowed a lot of deviation. So I think. And let's be frank, the properties in Maywood. And,
Worth $1
you
million.
know.
Probably.
Well, I don't think we're a real estate assessor. But I don't think they are. And I do think we could get into a situation where we hire a product that's so. So I don't think we want that. But I do think we need to kind of make sure whatever we're specifying needs most of them.
It just what ought to be discussed by the board, because I don't think the appearance matches. I think we ought to move in that direction. I would make an exception. I have no objection to that. Just think you need to go as.
I would also want to support. It matches all of their specifications. All we're really saying is we're okay with this case. So if someone came to us in the future, unless. And I feel like the Davis building can come.
I just want to say that under our charge statute, cost is not something that we charge considering when we are analyzing historic properties. That being said, I think that this is a little bit different situation than placing in historic. In that regard, I don't think we're necessarily. Carol, though, when we did promulgate these guidelines, we did acknowledge that there was nothing original that we were placing, and that we were looking for options that wouldn't be unaffordable necessarily. I think this is a very distinguishable situation from any of our local historic districts where we're dealing with windows. And I think that this is a case-by-case situation. Do I think the windows present the very best appearance? I think that they're very close, and it'd be interesting to see when they're installed the difference actually is. And I think we need to be as specific as we can. It's not the applicant's fault or anybody else's fault that the windows were discontinued. They just perhaps do some research on window manufacturers.
I would be disinclined. I just, the only reason I would support it is as an experiment to allow the applicant. And Joan said, see what it looks like. I'm really afraid that they won't look the same because of the profile. And maybe if we let one person do it without any, on an experimental basis, we see what they look like and we'd be able to tell whether it really does make a difference. I guess I have one question: is the 1/4 inch minimum depth, this matches that specification? I think that's the question that we haven't discussed that, but what Andy's talking about is perhaps increasing the minimum depth so that you get more height to it, okay? And so we didn't discuss that before. We framed it in terms of we didn't talk about minimum depth, but I think that's what Andy's talking about, that we need to increase the minimum depth. So I don't know what you're going to do with that in the guidelines that next month or so, but I think really that's the question that we have to find here, whether we want to increase the minimum, or increase the minimum depth, if that one meets. I don't know.
I have a tape measure. I can-
I just
If
couldn't
anybody really
Yeah,
wants
it
to
is,
know.
it's a quarter.
But it's also.
So it meets our.
Creates something. So that it stands out. The basis of what I know tonight, I just think that right to other homeowners, allow this, we're gonna have to allow anybody who wants them, even though just last month we decided we didn't like this. Okay, so you say it would be on a case by case basis, but I can't see how we require anybody who wants this type of window to somebody who is one of the other 3 or 4 that's approved doesn't have to come in. It just doesn't make any sense. Both from the staff's time and from the HALRB's time, if we're gonna approve this window, we ought to approve it with all the others. Just on a case by, there's no room for discussion. Person, they want it. That's really down our ability to judge whether people are poor, not afford the ones that.
So Carmela is online as well.
Carmela, any comments?
Yes, I'm here. I'm having difficulty hearing the other commissioners when they turn their heads to the side or raise their hands up. It's kind of blocking what it is that they're saying. Joan is the only person I've been able to hear all thoroughly. I will say that Jerry made a good point, I think, about whether or not this is going to work for everyone. So I couldn't hear all of the discussion about that, but it seems to me that if there's a way to make certain that this is something that's going to be applicable or good for everyone who needs to replace their windows, then that's the way we need to move forward. I would just hate to think we have to bring everybody before the commission and the preservation specialists every time that we want to look into changing the windows out.
Thank you, Carmela. With that, I think I'll make a motion. We can edit it. I think it'd be pretty simple. It may not be. It's some of the issues that were raised, but pretty quickly. So I move that HALRB approve COA 23-10 the Village Historic District request for a replacement vinyl windows which do not fulfill 2015 ACOA guidelines.
Yeah, I'd like to make an amendment. I think that we need, I would like to add that this is a situation in which proposed windows substantially meet all the criteria that we had set forth.
Did you catch that one?
Can you reread the last, after you said in the Colonial Village Historic District?
Request for replacement vinyl windows which do not fulfill the 2015 ACOA guidelines. Sorry for set of provision. And John want to add language that, which is true that these windows meet many or
Substantially meet the criteria.
Second question. So is this then applicable to not just this application, but there's that we now sort of make it like this?
I think we need to limit it. Make clear this is a specific situation, not precedent setting.
So once if we approve new ACOA guidelines, that become the standard at that point.
That would be, yeah.
And then anything that was not standard come before us again, obviously.
It's a COA.
The COA, and they could point to this, being that at the same time, it's like, from a homeowner sort of point of view, I think that you want to avoid as much sort of view as possible as a homeowner. So I think that having the guidelines there is sort of a deterrent to not have, I mean, I'm not saying it won't happen again. It's not good or bad, I suppose. I think that sort of conveyor belt having the same issue popping up again and again be somewhat limited by there being a new guideline that actually can be fulfilled, but by the
It's good.
Well, and Jerry and Joe are good points, because once this is approved and installed, it would allow us to see what don't work. Have that knowledge.
we can work that into the new guideline. I mean, obviously not, it may not work out timeline that way. That a lot.
So Dick seconded, but I felt like you amended. I want to make sure.
No, I'm just making a comment.
Just a comment, okay.
So I move that the HALRB approve COA 23-10 in the Colonial Village Historic District for the request for replacement vinyl windows which do not fulfill the 2015 ACOA guidelines. This current application's windows substantially meet the criteria.
Right, Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Ham,
Yes.
Mr. Laporte,
No.
Ms. Lawrence,
Yes.
Ms. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Trumbull,
Yes.
Mr. Wenchel,
No,
Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
Does pass.
When are you going to do the window replacement?
Now it has to go.
Like board
Anyway.
knows. Yeah, they have to get the Colonial Village Board now, so they can't.
So there's another.
There's another
That's
layer.
right, I forgot.
Another layer. Pretty sure they're gonna look amazing. You won't regret.
Next one is 2911.
This is an application in the for an application for a patio and pergola, and replacement rear basement door at 2911 23rd Street North in Maywood. There is an existing patio, so this is before we start, this is a pre-1922 contributing dwelling. And this is all the work is going to be done in the rear. Most recently, in 2019, the HLRB approved the replacement of a 3-tab asphalt shingle roof on the existing garage and a skylight on the same garage. In 2018, you approved the installation of a skylight air conditioning units and new exhaust vents, as well as the replacement of 3 existing exterior wooden doors, COA 1822. At the time, oh no, they applied for this. At the time, HPP completed a survey of the exterior doors in the subject property, including the main entrance door, the rear basement door, the kitchen door, and found them to be in working condition. The applicants withdrew the door replacement component of their ACOA. So currently, the applicant is proposing to install a pergola with retractable. And I really need to write a note to myself for them. Okay, so let me scroll first to an image. So these are existing drawings, and this is a site plan of the changes. And here is 3-dimensional renderings of a pergola with a retractable fabric canopy, sunken conversation area, and to replace a rear basement door with a fiberglass door. Currently, the rear of the property has a concrete patio at the northwest corner and a walkway along the north edge of the house, and a concrete wall in the garage. The current patio and walkway total approximately 300 square feet. The applicant proposes to replace the existing concrete patio with a new patio with flagstone border, stone patio steps, and a low concrete retaining wall at the northwest corner of the house. New sunken conversation pit will be installed adjacent to the pergola patio at the northeast corner. Total square footage for the new proposed surface area will be approximately 624 square feet. The proposed pergola will have craftsman-style tapered wood columns encased in PVC trim. We'll have 2 columns and 7 rafters attached to the existing house with a ledger board. The existing concrete wall from the patio to the rear of the property will be replaced in. The applicant is also applying to replace the existing 9-light half-glass wooden basement door at the rear with a fiberglass 12-light simulated divided light door to match the 12-light front entry door. The exterior door is manufactured by Masonite. And finally, they're proposing to install a generator next to the sunken fire. Show you examples, what to look. Site plan drawings, some of the details of the DRC. Listing again.
There were a lot of existing.
HKP staff recommends approval of this application. The proposed pergola patio will be located at the rear of the property and not be visible from the front elevation right of way, which meets the intents of Chapter 6, new addition / building. The proposed patio is larger than the 250 square feet listed as appropriate by staff. However, patios have been identified as appropriate outdoor living additions in the LHD. Pergolas have been approved in Maywood in the past, most recently in December 2020 at 2204 North Kenmore Street. Both stone and concrete are acceptable materials under the Maywood design guidelines. The replacement of the concrete walk could be considered, or would be considered an in-kind. Appendix D of the design guidelines states that under certain circumstances, the HALRB may permit the use of PVC trim on non-historic structures, non-contributing structures, new construction, and new additions to historic buildings. Not limited, or including but not limited to door trim, window trim, corner boards, cornice, fascia, etc. All PVC trim must comply with the list of design guidelines in Appendix D. The proposed location of the new site elements, as well as the use of concrete, stone, and PVC, meet the intent of standards 9 and 10 of the Secretary of Interior standards. Staff notes that it does not typically recommend replacement of materials considered appropriate in the Maywood LHD, such as wood, with materials like fiberglass. Wooden doors are typical in Maywood, both for interior and exterior uses. And the design guidelines only state that fiberglass doors are appropriate in sheds. However, the applicant submitted an image that indicates that the door was replaced in 1984. That image up. So there's this etching in the glass that indicates 1984. This is a secondary door opening and not on the primary facade of the home. Given the changes, the material is not historic, this change could meet the intent of Standard 9 of the Secretary's Interior standards, which are new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize property. And for precedent, staff wanted to note that in June 2021, the HLRB approved the replacement of one wooden bathroom window in the addition of a contributing home in the LHD with an identical vinyl window in a shower due to ongoing moisture issues. This was not a decision based on the desire to replace alone, but due to the ongoing humidity and ensuing rot affecting the site material. Evidence showed that the wood was not appropriate in that location and that replacing wood in kind would result in the same outcome in the future. Therefore, a man-made composite material was approved for that site-specific installation. However, the subject door, although a modern door, does not appear to be in the same condition of deterioration as the window in COA 2111 or the side door currently being proposed for replacement at 3210 23rd Street North in COA application 2013. Thus, MC staff. Online, would you like to invite them to speak in the DRC?
Yes. Sure. Any of you in the DRC report?
Yes. I think, first of all, could you scroll up to the site plan? To show. Maybe even go further to your first.
The
map.
existing? Okay.
Sorry,
Yes, it's the lower drawing.
it's large.
So this, or you want the literal map?
The little map.
Yes,
Start.
okay.
I can start. There you go. Could you blow that?
Sure.
If you look at the location of the house and backyard, there's nothing, there's not a neighbor really facing back. And backs all the way to the street and slopes quite a bit down from the house itself to the street to the side. I guess that's part of Fillmore. Because of that, I think the fiberglass doors are fine. I don't think anybody's going to see them. It's not something on the facade, or it's not even something that faces the neighbor where they could tell it wasn't wood door. So I think that part is fine. My first reaction when I saw the odor, if you will, is it seemed to be quite large compared to what's normally a traditional covering on the rear of the structure. So that was the reason for suggesting look at. I don't think you can really see this. It's just it seems to be a very large extension of the back, larger than you've seen before. Scroll just a little bit. You can see it there, and then scroll up and over to the. There you go. It extends out quite far. Usually,
What are the dimensions?
I think they're somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 feet or so.
I think it's 15 by 18.
You know,
Let's say 360 square feet or something.
so
That's total.
That's just, it's just, seems quite long. Or anything I've seen in the neighborhood. But no objection to it because of the way it faces. Nobody's going to really see this. Neighbors. So just pull that towards attention. Have your it's fine. I think that is one of the board to look at. But I think that it raises some questions, but because of the site, I don't think it's adversely affect visually historic character.
Thanks, Andy. Let's hear from the applicant, please.
Sorry, this is Scott. Did you guys ask to hear from the applicants?
Yes, Scott. Thank you.
Hey, I did not hear anything that was just said, nor did my wife. But do you want us to talk about the design?
Yes, anything that you want to add about the design, I guess, beyond the staff report. I mean, I guess the one comment that was issued recently was just that in general, based on the orientation of everything, it's acceptable. But there was some question about the size of the pergola. But other than that, I mean, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, when we bought the house, and went through the historical review in 2019, the whole idea was to maintain the historical stuff, and we were able to get the tax credits through Virginia for the work we did, on the house. We gutted the basement, and right now the basement, is part of this whole plan, is to sort of renovate it and then turn the backyard into kind of an exterior space. It's not really usable backyard right now. It's a very steep, drop off. So the area there, the patio area, is really to try to create a space to hang out and host people. When I looked at the design of the pergola, I thought it looked good. I did want, it's kind of a north facing, so we didn't want to have a lot of those cross beams, so we wanted to have light come through. But yeah, the whole idea is to turn that space into big enough space so we could actually host people in our backyard, have, enough people over to have dinner. And that space where you'd have it on the pergola could fit, a table for 6 or 8 people. That was kind of the intent. But that's it. That's the background back there. The door, it's not original, and I don't know if it's reflected there. It doesn't match the design in the rest of the house. They're all these sort of 5-panel style with, our front door has 12 lights, and our kitchen one has 2, but it's a different look. The one in the basement's got 9 lights, and it's got these sort of vertical panels on the bottom. So it's just to kind of get something that looks like it fits with the house. And then the other thing that we would be doing is replacing the current sidewalk, which is very narrow and steep and kind of treacherous to use in any bad weather. So it's a bit wider and actually accessible to the basement. So that's the summary of the work we're talking about. The intent really is just to make that space a livable space that we can move out to during when people are in the basement. You can see the basement's just gutted right now. So that's that.
Thank you. Now before the board.
No comment, Joan. There are other structures in Maywood that are that size. It's not covered, and it's
Right.
down. It's also down from the main house. And our 2 neighbors have screen porches that are large. And it's in the back. They're both in the back, so you can't really see them. This is probably a little bit more visible because you can see some of the property, but as the applicant said, it's a very steep hill. And you may have noticed that the roof of the garage is about ground level. So I think the neighbors next to them have done a little bit of landscaping where they've flattened out the hill. And this, I think I can support this. Agree with the staff, this is not an original door, and so therefore fiberglass not be an appropriate. And I think definitely will be a nice design and see.
I think that the design of the pergola is not disproportionate to the style of the house. If it overwhelmed the house, I think it would be good. It, and it actually, to me, it looks pretty good. It looks like it's definitely of the.
I think it looks great. I only have one question. Where's the generator?
There's a picture
That's-
with some shrubbery.
Yeah.
Shown
I think it's
On
a,
the plan. for
it's,
sure.
I think it's a drawing.
It's probably easiest to see if you look at the site plan. I
Yeah.
think it's near the top.
Well, so there it is. It's here.
Right side.
So I would be able to approve that per the appendix G because it's behind the.
Your comments or
Oh, yeah.
questions? So, motion, I move that HLRB approve COA 23-09, maybe Historic District. Request to install pergola, patio, and replace wooden door in rear with fiberglass door.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Ham,
yes,
Mr. Laporte,
Yes.
Ms. Lawrence,
Yes.
Ms. Myers, Mr. Turnbull,
Yes.
Mr. Winchell,
Yes.
and Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I need to get this.
I can run up.
So, this is in two parts because the applicant got me some additional pergola drawings yesterday, and so I was not able to add them to the application right away. But here is an existing image of the redevelopment.
All the rage.
Okay, so here we are. This is an application that has come back to you. It's an amendment to an application that you've seen before for a pergola and landscaping at the Green Valley Pharmacy, which is in 2415 South Shirlington Road. And the request is for fire retention planters that will be along the sidewalk and a pergola retractable that will be adjacent to the building over the seating area to make it more of a 360. So these are bioretention planters. Originally, the applicant had proposed to put in ornamental planters that were going to be movable, but for stormwater management purposes, they need to put in these bioretention planters. They are going to have a concrete kind of slightly raised edge here and next to, oh no, over here, sorry, to catch the majority of the water. And so there will be a separation between the pavement here and the bioretention planters. So here is our close-ups of the bioretention planters, which include information about the planting styles that will be included. And then this was the original submission about the pergola documents. However, they since submitted these drawings. Okay, so this is the surface area that they are proposing, and this is including the number of columns that they are going to have. Here is the information about the columns and the rafters and the elevation against the building. And from the side, sorry, again, cross-section with the rafters. And here again, and this is information about mounting and about how they will be attached to the ground, which is also something we asked them to provide. So again, let me go back to that image of it against the building. And so I had written the staff report before I received the pergola details. So I will read what I have about the bioretention planters. So the bioretention planters, there's 3 of them. They're going to be, A is 93 square feet rectangular installation, then B and C are 108 and 130 square feet respectively, and they will have a low 2 to 4 inch curve on the farthest side of the building. So we recommend approval of the proposed bioretention planters. Proposed changes are minor to the landscape, will help the site meet stormwater management goals, and they are located at grade that will not interfere with the use of the historic building. and will be installed along the sidewalk and do not damage or affect any historic site elements, which complies with standards 9 and 10 of the standards. So for the pergola, we had supported the idea of a pergola, and we because we wanted the applicant to be able to use the building, and we knew that it could not be used for its previous use, which was a pharmacy, because the pharmacy requirements for safe space for OPM storage are not feasible within the current footprint. And because the pergola would be reversible, it complies with those standards for those standards, and the attachment to the building is going to be minimal, and so it should not interfere. In addition to that, when the sign was taken down, they were able to repair the plasterwork in a way that was not detrimental to the existing. This has also been installed, according to the drawings, below the coping, which was a request by Mr. Wenchel. I believe there are no public comments for this, but I believe the applicant is on the line, Mr. Maharbe.
Mr. Maharme?
Yeah, 1 minute. Hello, hi, how you doing?
Good.
Sorry, I wasn't mute.
Do you have anything additional to contribute? You're speaking, we can't hear you.
You may not be here.
Oh, gosh. All right, I'll take elocution lessons. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think the page crashed. I come back now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
We'd like to start discussion, and whenever he comes back on, is able to speak.
Any comments or questions about the pergola or about the fire station? Oh, wait.
Yeah, sorry about that. Hello?
Yeah, hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
We can hear you.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any question for me, or you want me to say something about it?
If you have anything to contribute that I haven't gone over, feel free. Otherwise, the commission can discuss and ask you questions.
Yeah, at this moment, this is like, as I told you, this is gonna be like the first draft. I'm gonna just make some more modification. I will send it to you.
Okay, so when do you think the updated drawings would be? Because the reason for approving them now is because you currently have an application for
Oh, okay.
civil engineering.
Yeah, the only thing we need to, because I remember you said you want this to be sloped. I'm gonna change the roof.
I didn't ask for it to be sloped. I just said that the previous drawings had shown that it was sloped, and I just wanted to confirm that it's not and it is flat.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's the only thing. Plus, the draft, the drawing should be extended to the door. Actually, that's what our drafter he missed. I have to increase it to the left, one more column.
Okay, so it would be covering the window. This was, I believe Mr. Wenchel already made the comment that he recommends that you do not cover the window because it is reflective of the storefront nature of the property.
Yeah.
Mr. Wenchel, you may want to.
Okay. Yeah, because the owner wants me to extend it, but if you think we don't want to cover the window, I thought he might close the window. That's why he asked me to do it. But in this case, we could leave it as is for now.
The window is original to the building. I think, I mean, I cannot guarantee this, but I would say that staff would not recommend enclosing the window, would not support that application.
Okay.
But
then leave it up as is then.
Yes. So just confirming with you, the application for the flat roof, as it's shown on these drawings, is accurate and is what you would like. And he's back.
Serena, I just also emailed to you today. Other one with the sloped roof. If you'd like, if you have access to your email.
I do. Okay, 641.
Yeah.
So which one do you want a sloped roof or do you want a flat roof?
Yeah, I prefer to have it sloped down in case of one, we put the retractable fabric roof in case of there's some rainy or, better, it looks nicer with the slope.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, I think we'll do actually, since it's sort of a discrepancy between what's desired and what's a draft, we're gonna go ahead and just take a look at the bioretention this evening, and then please come back to us with the final on the pergola. And it can be sloped or flat, either way, but for now, we're just gonna take a look only at the bioretention areas this evening.
Okay.
That, any questions or comments about the bioretention area?
Okay, do you have any question about the bioretention? You want me?
No, nothing, no. I think what we'll go ahead and do now is we'll actually, make a motion, on the matter and, so I move that HLRB approve the proposed, I move that HLRB approve COA 2130, B.
2311. Is that right?
But I wrote
With COA number?
No, it should be extension and amendment of the
2130B. COA 2130B, Green Valley Pharmacy, Historic District, was to install bioretention planters. Only. Call the roll?
Okay, Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Ham,
Yes.
Mr. Laporte,
Yes.
Ms. Lawrence,
Yes.
Ms. Myers, Mr. Turnbull,
Yes.
Mr. Winchell,
Yes.
and Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
Unanimous.
All right, thank you. And then again, please do come back to us with the, pergola design, either flatter or sloped, either one.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I will get back with Serena and finalize it with her.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, guys.
One more.
Almost there.
Okay, so the final discussion COA for the evening is the return of a historic marker at Fort Ethan Allen. You already saw the language once, and it's come back for your review based on recommended edits to the language. You received a number of comments by email. In addition to that, one of the commenters has signed up to speak tonight. So after we do our report, we invite Mr. Byrd to speak. So as background, this is the text, but let me pull up that kind of image. Text. So Fort Ethan Allen was built in September 1861 as a large bastion-style fort. Originally, the site was surrounded mostly by farmland. Farmland and forests, which were cut down to allow for clear lines of sight toward other fortifications and purchased to DC. The Department of Parks and Recreation participated in the Civil War Trails program, a multi-state heritage program connecting Civil War sites across the East Coast since at least the 1990s. The Civil War program connects Arlington sites to a larger audience. DPR pays annual fees to be included in the Civil War Trails program for 5 interpretive markers, 1 at Fort Ethan Allen, 3 at Fort C.F. Smith, and 1 at the Arlington Mill site. The existing Civil War Trail site sign at the Fort Ethan Allen was installed in a secluded part of the park circa 2003. In June 2013, the HLRB approved the installation of 9 historic markers around the fort, including 4 markers set in the circular plaza and a bronze sculptural rendition of the fort site in the northern portion of the park. So that is. The proposal is to move the existing CWT marker from a less accessible location near the Fort Ethan Allen Trench to one that is closer to the other markers dedicated to Fort Ethan Allen, just off North Old Glebe Road. The marker will be installed adjacent to the walkway connecting the circular plaza to the sidewalk. The applicant is also requesting to replace the existing language on the marker with previously uninterpreted information about the African American soldiers who served in the USCT, stationed at this and other Arlington forts during the Civil War. The HLRB first reviewed this proposed historic marker at its April hybrid public hearing and then requested that it return for second review of the content. Staff recommends approval of this application is submitted. The area in which the marker will be relocated has been disturbed in the past. For development of the interpretive site. Sorry, I keep scrolling. As such, the location meets the intent of Standard 8 of the Secretary of the Interior Standards, which is archaeological resources will be protected and preserved in place. The new topic proposed for the marker is appropriate for the site. Staff believes this location of the marker will make it more accessible for all visitors to Fort Ethan Allen. And this is the proposed location, and again here, and then the text and images. The images have stayed the same. And here's the updated text. And I believe that John McNair is on the line, as well as director for the Civil War Trails Marker Program. If you have any comment, you want to yes, them first and then invite the public. Okay. McNair?
Hi, am I coming in okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you all for having us back. You know, we're pleased to see this project moving forward, and we were so excited to see so much interest in the project from the public. You know, we've received a lot of interesting comments. We've had some very good conversations, talking to people in person, online, through the Historic Preservation Open House a few weeks ago. And you know, this has been a very exciting time for us to finally get this interpretive sign moving, which we feel has been long overdue in the Arlington Park system. Also, as you pointed out, Serena, I am not alone today. Today, to help answer any questions you might have on the Civil War Trails side of things, we are joined by Drew Gruber, Executive Director for Civil War Trails. Drew and I have been working together on the Trails projects in Arlington for a few years now, and I'm hoping that he can provide more context to the project. Again, this is kind of a different project than what we might be used to when we put historic markers into park spaces. As you pointed out, Civil War Trails is a multi-state organization that the Conservation and Interpretation Unit of the Department of Parks and Recreation pays annual membership fees to stay within. We contract with Civil War Trails to make some of these signs in the park's locations, and then for an annual fee of $200 per sign per year, Civil War Trails will move the signs, they will redevelop the signs, they will repair the signs. They will also keep us located on their marketing brochures. They will keep us plugged into their social media networks. And like you said, they extend the reach of Arlington County's Civil War sites of memory to a much wider audience. So again, as you pointed out, the original sign that we were looking at in what is now Old Glebe Park, that sign possibly dates back about as far back as 2004. That sign predated the original, or predated the newer interpretive layout for Fort Ethan Allen Park that was, you know, very masterfully put together in conjunction with the Old Glebe Civic Association. Cannot thank the Civic Association enough for making Fort Ethan Allen Park such a highly trafficked site of Civil War memory in Arlington County. So because we already have this Civil War Trails marker that keeps Fort Ethan Allen within the Civil War Trails network. We thought this would be an appropriate way to tell a new story at Fort Ethan Allen while simultaneously hitting some of the Civil War Trails guidelines for their signs, making it a little bit easier to read, making it a little bit easier to find, and again, touching on more human elements of the conflict that have often been overlooked in park interpretation. With that, I think I'm going to briefly hand it off to Drew. Drew, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I wanted to thank you all for having me this evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I will say that I was elated to get this application from John. It's long overdue to have the memory of these men highlighted. And additionally, although we're not held to specific compliance standards, I was very excited to see that the site itself would become more physically ADA compliant. So I'm here to answer any questions you have about the program. Our process, we are constantly adding content to these signs and updating them as we get feedback from visitors, the descendants of each one of these individual regiments. It is a phenomenal program to be at the helm of, rather humbling. And I'm very pleased to be working with John on this. He's done a great job. For me, on my end, once we have preliminary approval for the installation of the sign, the content itself is going to go back to our editor and a blind review team. We'll come back with any questions or concerns, which will then go back to John. As soon as sort of John and I have agreed that the language looks good and it's gone through my board, on my end, the application is considered approved, and then I can design it and schedule an installation. But that's only where we begin. As you see, what John's doing now in both editing and updating the content is pretty commonplace for us. We do not view our signs as being permanent pieces of infrastructure or commemorative or ones that memorialize, but rather tools in the toolkits of public historians like John and organizations like yourself to be amended and updated as we find out more specifically about these Black men. So thank you again for having me, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about our program.
One public speaker. I would note the two gentlemen on the screen, you received comments from them. So you should have received those inbox. Mr. Byrne, you signed up to speak publicly. Are you on the call with us?
Yes, here I am.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay. As the applicant is requesting to move his existing Civil War Trails marker from a location as near a Civil War rifle trench in Glebe Road Park. The rifle trench is within the area the county board has designated as a Fort Ethan Allen Trench Historic Park District in 1995. The trench is southwest of South Fort Ethan Allen. So we're dealing actually with two historic districts here, not just one, which is kind of it's an important point actually. The applicant proposes to remove the mark from Fort Ethan Trench to a location within the Fort Ethan Allen Historic District. The markers location would be near Old Glebe Road and close to existing markers located within the circular plaza and inside the Ethan Allen Historic District. The staff is requesting to review the marker, revise the marker, by replacing the marker's existing language with previous uninterpreted information about the American soldiers who served in the U.S. colored troops, USCT, those stationed, of course, at Ethan Allen and other forts. However, that information is incomplete. Further, some of the information is not correct. Please make the following changes. The revised marker does not describe the role of the colored troops while serving in Arlington Fort. The marker needs to contain this information. The marker states that the Army deployed members to of the USCT to Arlington Forts in October 1865 at the Fort Ethan Allen. That was 6 months after General Robert E. Lee surrendered the Army of Northern Virginia in April. The Army deployed the regiment to all these forts to help dismantle the forts after the war ended. This finding is saying nothing about that. The revised marker further states that the Army deployed members of the regiment as guards for Freedmen's Bureau. However, it does not describe the activities of the regiment while at Fort Ethan Allen and other forts. A marker in the plaza states that the regiment was garrisoning Fort Ethan Allen while the Army was auctioning off some of its contents. The garrison duty only occurred because the Army did not dismantle the fort until months after the regiment arrived. After the auction, the regiment helped dismantle the fort. So basically, that was their purpose: to dismantle the fort. You need to state that. But most importantly, the revised marker needs to state that USCT did not generally garrison the fortifications of the defense of Washington, but instead worked as temporary laborers after the war ended. The marker needs to state this, and to state that the dismantling of forts was one of the USCT's assignments. Then in addition, there's an error in the marker. It talks about, it says that the enlistment of the USCT guaranteed freedom for recruits, but required the consent of individual slavers.
Mr. Byrne?
Okay, just a few minutes. Okay, they're origin slavers because the slaves were enslaved in Africa.
Mr. Byrne, your time is up.
What? Okay, just one other thing. Don't approve this unless they replace the marker near the trench with some historical marker. Right now, the trench will be unprotected and unmarked, and this really is not a way to treat a historic site. So, but don't approve it unless they agree to do the other thing. It's in my written statement if you read it.
Thank you. And your written statement was received, and it will also be written into the meeting minutes.
For the board. Comments or questions for any of the?
I think it looks great. I'm for it.
I always have comments. But I think, we need to decide what story we're trying to tell here. Previous draft that we had was, and they've kept the same title that says the 107th USCT's March to Freedom. It talked about them organizing and a few of them ending up in Arlington. And I think there was a criticism that, well, this is supposed to be a historic marker to tell about Arlington's history. So you got to put more in there about Arlington. So they've done that, but so they've sort of lost the storyline from they've kept the same title, but you don't really understand, like, for instance, you get down to the third paragraph when they start talking about Kentucky and you say, why is Kentucky involved here? Okay, because they dropped the language about, them being organized in Kentucky in this March to Freedom. So I'm not against telling that story, but are we telling the story of the 107th March to Freedom, or are we telling the story of the colored troops, USCT in Arlington? And this sort of mixes up both, so you sort of really don't know what story is being told. And I just had a couple of other things, like they talked about in the last sentence of the first paragraph, 2 companies. And I'm not sure if these are companies of the 107th or if they're the USCT. I think they need to specify that. They talk about surrounding fortifications. I think maybe what they need to be more specific, maybe even say nearby, and then they say, well, several other companies were stationed throughout Arlington County. Okay, and so, I mean, that's the language that they're trying to put in to talk about the colored troops. And to me, although it's technically not Arlington County, most people think of it as Arlington County. The colored troops were originally trained on Teddy Roosevelt Island. That's technically the District of Columbia, but it's attached. And I mean, that's a really important part of the history of the USCT. It's essential. And so since that's so close to Arlington, it seems to me really can't tell the story of the U.S. colored troops in Arlington without mentioning that, the original USCT trained, and they were trained there because Abraham Lincoln, they were in danger. People, there's a real story to be told here that who didn't want black men, even Northerners who didn't want black men in the U.S. Army, so they had to protect them. That's one of the reasons they went to Teddy Roosevelt Island, so they could train and they wouldn't get they wouldn't be subject to violence by people who didn't want them. So I don't know if we need to put that in, but others in the last paragraph, it says in October 75, it says they were deployed. I'm not sure who they're talking about. That 107th, is that the USCT? I think there's kind of a lack of clarity here as to who we're talking about. And they say they were detached to the quartermaster. I don't understand. That means, how can you be detached to? Usually detached from, okay? So, I mean, I just think the language needs to be clarified to see exactly what's trying. But we could work on that. Maybe we could tell both, I think we could tell both stories, which is what they're trying to do, but I think we could do a better job telling both stories than to sort of mix it up the way it's been mixed up in this draft.
I think Jerry makes some good points. I mean, I'm definitely in favor, generally speaking, but there is sort of this portion there, sort of about the Kentucky part. It sort of comes sort of after things, and it is a little bit. I do think Jerry makes sense. I mean, generally, I'm in favor of it, but yeah, or it just needs a little bit of the work, I think.
Some of Mr. Schaffner's comments address the issues. Looks like there are a lot of possible comments that could be integrated to come up with a tells a story, maybe a little bit more precisely. So, high support.
I also discussed with John and Schaffner that there's a lot of information that we can't fit. And so I wonder where the appropriate place would be to put all of this research in a longer format. Because every interpretation that we try to create on this marker is going to relieve us of nuance that is helpful for the everyday reader. So I don't know if that's the Center for Local History's website or Wikipedia or DPR's website, but hopefully, since, as they have mentioned, there's not much public research about this available, it would be nice to make the research that has been done available to the public and link it to this marker.
That the websites could be included in the marker.
It could be.
Even have, I've seen a lot of historic markers have QR codes these days, so I don't know if we've done that.
We haven't yet.
We haven't, but a lot of them.
I think we were waiting to see if QR codes were flashing.
I recall having a discussion on the viability of QR codes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think a link to a website.
Yeah.
We do both. A lot of people do both now.
If you have the room.
We just received confirmation that QR codes cannot be used on Civil War trail signs. So we would have to have another option to share information separate from that.
Well, I will say that our mission here is not that U.S. history is worth telling, but is Arlington County the entity that's supposed to be telling, or even the historic preservation program supposed to be telling U.S. history. I mean, it's all mingled together, but we really, it would be better if we tried to focus on Arlington history. Other troops following it, if that's what Civil War trails. I mean, I know they have a bigger mission, but since it's on Arlington land, we ought to have something about this. Yeah, we should, it's a partnership between us and them.
Makes sense.
It has been suggested that Drew maybe speak to the review board members and like that process with Civil War trails. All would like to hear that.
That might be helpful. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Feel free to go ahead and share that information, Drew.
Just to clarify a little bit about how our process works.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So the coolest thing about my job is that the content information for every single Civil War trail sign around the nation is generated at the grassroots. So I just worked on the most incredible project in coastal North Carolina, where the descendants of a USCT regiment were the ones who have been doing the research, using the oral history, and presented to us that draft content. And that's really the genesis of every single Civil War trail sign. So very much like John has done here, he being our primary stakeholder, working with research historians in the National Park Service, people in the community. He pulls together this draft text for us to look at. What we then do is we wait for the preliminary approval of the site. And once we have preliminary approval of where the site goes, we then take the draft text and that site information and we put it through a consumer review. So when a visitor arrives at a Civil War Trails site, and there are 1,400 of them across 6 states, they expect to be standing in the footsteps of that individual, that moment in history, or within a very close visual eye shot of that site. So we take the application, the preliminary site, we take the locally researched content, and it goes over to our editor and a blind review committee, which is made up of 1 or 2 historians who maybe have written about the topic. Occasionally my neighbor Caitlin, who's in 6th grade, will be on the blind review committee because she's not really vested in the Civil War. And what that does is that ensures that the local voice, the local research is codified, it's vetted, but it reads well for people of all ages and backgrounds. So we recently did a bilingual sign down in Fairfax because we realized that most of the people interacting with that sign didn't have English as a primary language, and that came out during that review process. What we then do is we'll come back and we'll come back to the applicant, in this case it's John, and say, hey, you knocked it out of the park, or hey, we had these few tweaks to make. And what we have to do in 250 words is put the visitor into the footsteps of that moment. Use the sign as that caption for the landscape. It can't be a data dump. It's meant to fuel their imagination, give them some factoids of history, but inspire them to go seek out other information and then to share that with us so we can edit and amend and update the sign, share that with our stakeholders like John or Michael, who's shared his comments on the application. And then once everybody has agreed on the final text, once it's gone through the Civil War Trails process, then it's considered approved on my end. And then once we approve it, we can go to design, we can move to fabrication, and then we install it. But that's where the hard work sort of begins, because once the sign is installed in the ground, myself, clients like John, we're going to record visitor interactions. Some of those interactions will say things like, I got this date wrong, you might need to fix that. Or, hey, is this really the citation for that photograph? Other people, specifically travelers of color, are going to come to us with information that they have about their ancestors who were in that regiment. And what we're going to do is we're going to determine, can we update the sign to include that information? Is that something we can archive with people like John or the Arlington Historical Society? And that's really what sort of keeps this program going, is that these signs are constantly evolving and being updated. And as I think I mentioned before, we specifically don't design them, build them, or install them to be permanent, but to be flexible toolkits. So I'm really excited to see Arlington sort of flexing the power of this program. So for us on my end, I'm sort of still at the beginning phases of my application from John. I hope that sort of clarifies a little bit about who we are and what we do. The thing I haven't even gotten into is all the marketing stuff we do to bring people to Arlington, to each of these sites, and then to promote the events and programs that are happening there. So signs are only a small piece of what we do every single day. I'm happy to answer any questions if time allows, but that's a little bit about how our process works in a nutshell.
Thank you.
Well, I wanted to confirm, so there are 2 parts to this, the location and the language. And so I don't know if you want to separate those 2 things out. John, is there a priority for you on moving the site before the language is approved? Do they need to be improved in tandem?
Again, so at this moment, Drew and Civil War Trails has taken the old sign, but nothing has gone into the ground just yet. Part of the reason why we had chosen the location that we did was in part because of the story that we wanted to tell with the 107th sign. If you could go back to the images of the location. Yeah, so if you're looking across the street here, you will see the sign right at the corner between the sidewalk and the walkway up to the metal relief map in the Circle Plaza that directs people into Fort Ethan Allen Park. The original idea that we came up with was for the Civil War Trail sign with the 107th USCT story to sit next to that sign so that it could be read by somebody who is walking down to the Circle Plaza. Yes, right there. Again, there were a couple reasons how we landed on this site specifically. first and foremost, we wanted to make sure that the sign was accessible and easy to find for people who are following the Civil War trails or for just regular park visitors. One of the big problems with the original sign was that it was in a space within Glebe Park that was relatively difficult to find by people who didn't already know where it existed. Now that brings up the question, well, could the sign go somewhere else that's accessible, say closer to the Madison Community Center or closer to the parking lot where cars might travel? And that is certainly true, but there are a few more benefits to having it at that location on the lead up to the Circle Plaza. The first being that it puts the sign in proximity to the plaza itself. You can see from the image here that you have the plaza surrounded by 4 interpretive signs. You have the metal relief map of Fort Ethan Allen. But what is a little bit harder to see from this picture is that on the ground floor surrounding the metal relief map, you have the names of all of the states that contributed state volunteers to the defense of Fort Ethan Allen. It's a wonderful structure to have in the parks. So since that structure does not have a section for either federal volunteers, which USCT troops would have been considered, nor does it have a marker for the state of Kentucky where the 107th came from, we thought it appropriate that a 107th USCT sign should be in proximity to the plaza to just fill in that gap. Because as we've said, documentation shows that the 107th was stationed at Fort Ethan Allen and across Arlington County. So anywhere that commemorates the individual volunteers should have that accompanying 107th USCT interpretation. Something else that Drew and I kind of came to the realization of when we were scouting the location is that if you were to look at the sign from its proposed location next to the Fort Ethan Allen entrance sign that we see right here, this coordinates not perfectly, but somewhat with the location of the fort's original armory and ordnance buildings. These would have been freestanding buildings within Fort Ethan Allen that today would have been about where Old Glebe Road is, so off to the left-hand side of the farm of the sign. Given that these outbuildings tied directly into some of the jobs that the USCT were given when they were garrisoned in Arlington, detached to the quartermaster's department or acting as guards for the various fortifications for the freedmen's camps, this could be a potential opportunity to highlight those structures within the fort through a sign of their own. So again, that was one of the notes that I think we had considered adding to the draft language after it had been submitted for the second go-around. And additionally, I would say that just about every comment that we've gotten, all the feedback we've gotten, I've read it very carefully. I've sent it off to Drew for his consideration. And all of this will come together to give us a good idea of what the sign should be. So while I would say that at present, this is our preferred sign location, it is still flexible for us. If this is just an unworkable location, then we will go back to the drawing board because we believe in this project. But there are a variety of reasons we feel for the sign to specifically be located where we have outlined.
Thank you. So would it be possible to split up the sign from the language, or should we sort of look at it together?
The language has to come back anyway in the Civil War Trails draft, correct? Either John or Drew. I thought it was gonna come back to us in the format layout.
Drew, do you want to touch on the Civil War Trails side of things there? Or?
Yeah, so once we have a preliminary site approval, at that point, we then take the draft application, which includes the site that's being proposed, whether that be editing and moving an old sign or adding a new one. And then we compare that with the text that's proposed, and that's what goes off to our editorial and then consumer review. And we pull the consumers for every single site that is unique. as every site is unique. And then what we'll do is we'll compare the site selected to the story that is told. Everybody here, and I've read the comments pretty thoroughly, everybody here sort of hit the nail right on the head. When you approach a Civil War trail sign, the first sentence that the visitor looks for is, why am I standing here? So you need to look up and make that visceral connection with space. And then once we do that review, again, so we need preliminary approval of the site, and then I can take the draft proposed content and text, and then that goes out through our review process, and then it will come back to John, who's my applicant, and we'll say, hey, here's where we think it can be tightened up or tweaked or put back into our style. The thing that I would say that makes me a little bit of an outsider, although certainly not unfamiliar with historic district commissions or architectural review boards, is that we are constantly updating trail sign content. So we know almost immediately within the first several months of a sign being on the landscape, we will get visitor feedback, and we typically are updating trail sign content within a year. So my perspective, which again is of an outsider, is that sign content on Civil War trail signs does constantly revolve, and it does constantly update. So I don't know how that would necessarily dovetail or interact with your process here today. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you. I guess with that, I'll make a motion and we can dodge it obviously. So I move that HLRB approve CLA 23-14, request to install new circle marker and conditionally improve marker language. That may need some work there. That's kind of when ended up. That's a little vague, I guess, but I just want to say that we also get in there and look at the language as it is. We do want to get in there. So it sounds like for the process, I guess conditional proof of language. I have. Any other thoughts?
That sound though like we're not always gonna be. And I would just location of the sign.
As approved.
Well, I mean, I just don't think our job is really ever. So, I mean, I think we're approving a marker for the Civil War trails to, place a marker about. There. I don't.
But are we also approving the location?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yes, I'm having a question about what location are we approving? Because I heard John say this is where we're proposing it, but we could change it. And
Not the location.
no, I thought he said that they,
Like,
no, I thought he was talking about location. Okay.
Well,
I
can you
thought
clarify?
He said they're still thinking about it. And then, yes, Michael from Civil War Trails. Drew, okay. Drew said, oh, as soon as we get the location, what we do, the first thing is we take a look at it and we decide whether the language that's been proposed matches.
Well, they proposed location. Like they want to propose it.
Preliminary approval. Okay. So I guess what are we preliminarily? Is it,
Proposed location.
Location.
Okay.
I think we need to make.
That's proposed next to the
Okay.
So, yes. I move that HRB approve COA 2314, request install the historical marker at the proposed location.
At the location proposed.
At location proposed.
Second.
Can we add an at Fort Ethan Allen? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would.
At the location proposed at Fort Ethan Allen.
So do you want to say anything about content, or are you limiting your approval to location? At the location.
Well, I get the impression from gentlemen from Civil War Trails that once they get the location, then they're going to write the content.
Right.
And then we'll look at it, I guess. Perhaps maybe some input to it, but I don't think huge amount. Certainly going forward. Installation.
I think Katie summarized it well by basically you're blessing the general subject matter. The exact content is in progress.
Yeah, we could say something, you know, the marker regarding.
I mean,
Because I think.
yeah, no, that's true.
Okay, so then what is the motion on the table, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, I'll start over again, I guess. So,
I'll withdraw my second.
all right, I move the HLRB approve COA 23-14. At 40 Ethan Allen Park, right, at Fort Ethan Allen Historic District, to install marker at the proposed location. And
I think fix that location. Right, okay.
I think it's the location proposed.
And the location.
And the and the language regarding the 107 USCT.
I'll second.
Fingers caught up.
Yes.
With that,
Mr. Davis,
yes.
Ms. Ham,
Yes.
Mr. Laporte,
Yes.
Ms. Lawrence,
Yes.
Ms. Myers, Mr. Turnbull,
Yes.
Mr. Winchell,
Yes.
and Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
John, is that what your team needs, or is there more that you need?
We do not need anything else at this time. If the location has been approved, then we will move on from there. And once once Civil War Trails has been able to draft that signed template, we will come back for final approval.
All right, thank you, John. Thank you. Thanks, Drew.
Thank you.
Take a 20-second stretch. Round two. Get your snacks, fill your water, be comfortable. Sorry, we don't have popcorn. Go for some popcorn.
I'm gonna get one of those cots. Make your own.
Have plenty in the budget. Chocolate, please. To the center. Thank you.
Come up to the table.
Yeah.
We're gonna get rid of this ball.
Yeah.
They right here.
What was it, the first day of summer?
Like
I don't think
draft,
it's
yeah.
It's all big, it's like the, payroll, like.
Or like, it's like, the big draft thing. Watermark.
Take a break. Lauren, do you have others on your team on the phone?
Yeah, I think
You have everyone you need?
we have, Sarah or Laura.
Laura Hughes is.
I think that's everybody.
And then I'm joining now. Sorry, we need me on the
And then,
call.
yeah,
So I can
Alice-
present. Mr. Schaffner, just wants you to know that your video is on.
probably want to come on. Thanks for joining tonight. You can turn off your camera. Thank you. Great.
Thank you for your patience.
All right. So.
Wish I had popcorn.
Next time. So next on the agenda is our informational item, Barcroft Apartment Section 3 renovation, and we have members of the Gerald Lynch team that's here with us tonight, as well as on the phone. Sorry, like a radio show. The phone on the line. Do you all want to introduce yourselves real quick before I give my staff report?
Absolutely. Thank you all. Seen you before. Lauren Riley with Walsh Colucci. We represent the applicant team, Gerald Lynch. And
David Cody with Gerald Lynch. I'm Jeff Preps with FICA. We're the civil engineer and the landscape architect.
Alice Hageman with Gerald Lynch.
And online we have Bonsher Harrison Architects, H1.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Merdad Frouzan, architect from Bonsher Harrison Architects. I'm here with Antoine Laduron, Eli Perez, and Hélène McCrock from our office.
We have Trace Rees online as well. I think I saw Sarah.
Hi,
Yeah,
everyone.
Sarah and Laura.
And Mia's here as well from Traceries.
That's our team. We did try to outnumber you all.
Great. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. And just as a reminder, if everybody can speak kind of to the sky, let's see if that works so that people can hear our discussion. But before we go into your presentation, I have to give a staff report, so I'll keep it as brief as I can. So just for background information, this is a continuation discussion concerning the Barcroft Apartments, a 1,334 unit garden apartment community located along Columbia Pike corridor between South George Mason Drive and South 4 Mile Run Drive. Barcroft is identified in the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Area Plan, also known as the Form-Based Code, which was adopted by the County Board in 2013. Barcroft is one of 3 multifamily residential areas identified as a conservation area in the Neighborhood Form-Based Code. Based on the standards of the conservation areas, applicants are required to meet with the HLRB a minimum of 2 times before the project can be considered by the County Board, and tonight is their second visit to the HLRB to discuss this project. Gerald Lynch project team is presenting the remaining details that they are proposing for a pilot renovation program focused on Section 3 of Barcroft Apartments, which will occur on buildings 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26, and rear additions are proposed for buildings 24, 25, and 26. This is an informational item, and there is no necessary HLRB motion or action occurring this evening. So just to talk briefly about the proposal, the remaining details of Section 3 renovation scope is to be considered by the HLRB, including 8 items. The different color options for the brick cladding on the sleeping porch sections of the additions, the attic vent design option for the additions, vinyl window replacements at the basement stories of the existing building, replacement of exterior entrance lighting, pre-plan and courtyard renovation, repairs to the existing detached historic garages, placement of new penetrations on the rear elevations for utility vents, and potential options for 2 specific elements required by Virginia Housing for the Affordable Housing Tax Credit, which include the covering of exterior wood elements and the installation of entry canopies. So this portion of the project was heard by the DRC during their hybrid meeting on June 7th, and the Gerald Lynch project team presented the remaining details of it. And to kind of go over what they talked about concerning the brick color of the sleeping porch sections of the addition, the DRC preferred option 1, which was the lighter multi-tone brick that would utilize salvaged historic brick. The DRC preferred the modern design of 3 rectangular attic vents, with the middle vent being taller than the 2 flanking it, as it could assist with distinguishing the new additions from the original historic buildings. DRC acknowledged that it would be appropriate to replace the original metal frame basement windows with vinyl windows with the same fenestration pattern, as this was seen as a small change, and other windows have already been replaced with vinyl windows on these buildings in Section 3. The DRC did not have any issues with replacing the light fixtures, but staff did want to know how many would be installed, if any new locations were being proposed. For the trees located in Section 3, the DRC acknowledged the project team's approach, specifically with the removal of 7 healthy trees to enable the construction of the rear additions. Staff voiced some concerns about some of the trees being proposed for removal during that meeting. For the existing detached garages, the DRC supported the overall proposed repairs, but had questions about the existing garage door material and what the replacement garage door material would be. And concerning the Virginia housing requirements, the DRC recognized the requirements for the cladding of the wood trim elements. And for the entry canopies, the DRC supported option 2 for the main entrances because of their simple shed roof design. And they supported they only provided one option for the rear entrance canopies, but they were in support of it. Now, to go into staff recommendations. At this time, the HALRB were being asked to provide design feedback for this portion of the project. So, and just kind of give you one thing that you can do, though, the HALRB can provide kind of an official recommendation, or if you have any concerns, to the county board when the use permit is being heard by the county board in July of this. So staff does not have any issues with the two-tone color option for the brick cladding on the sleeping port sections of the additions. We don't have any issues with the modern style rectangular shaped attic vents for the additions, or the replacement of the exterior lighting, or the repairs to the garages, and we don't have any issues with penetrations of rear elevations or utility vents. These all cover the guidance in the conservation area standards, and they also follow the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation of historic properties, specifically standards 1, 2, and 9. Skip. Although most of the proposed scope is consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards and the conservation area standards, there are just a couple that aren't following it. Removal of the replacement of the steel sash basement windows with vinyl basement windows matching the original configuration. So, staff, we consider the proposed replacement of the steel sash basement windows with vinyl as a minor change to the historic material of the existing buildings. And we also acknowledge that the original window configuration and fenestration pattern is important to retain, which is what is being proposed for the basement replacement windows. Concerning the new penetrations for vents on the rear elevations, that is also kind of going away from the conservation area standards. However, we see this as necessary for the historic buildings to adapt to the needs of its current and future residents without negatively affecting the character defining features, and these penetrations will be minimal and will only be visible from the rear elevations. Now let's talk about the Virginia housing requirement. I want to provide just a little bit of context that I've been able to get since I wrote my staff report. I had a conversation with a staff member from Virginia Housing this morning, and although they can't really guarantee with me that waivers for the 2 items, which is the cladding of wood elements, as well as the addition of these canopies over the entrances, they couldn't really tell me that because they have to go through the application process. They did indicate that they usually work with making sure that any changes or their requirements are appropriate for the historic buildings, and they try to prevent any negative effects. So for that, I'm very hopeful with how that conversation is going to go. And it just means that the J.R. Lynch team, as well as staff, will try and provide as much information as possible to Virginia Housing on why we would like those items to be waived. But although that's the case, and I'm hoping that will happen, we still need to consider what these elements are going to be, because it still has to be part of their proposal. So staff agrees that the cladding of the existing wood trim material is a minimum change to these character defining features. The applicant will be required to repair any deteriorated wood prior to cladding it with vinyl or aluminum. Although this cladding will be visible, will be like a visible barrier, the wood material will still exist and the cladding treatment can be reversible. And then to talk about the canopies, the proposed designs will not overshadow the decorative door surrounds on the facades and are compatible to the overall design of Barcroft. Additionally, the installation of the canopies will only affect the mortar joints and will not cause damage to the historic brick material. The cladding existing wood materials and the installation of the entry canopies mostly follow standards 6 and 10 of the Secretary of Interior standards. Almost done. So regarding the tree preservation, staff was concerned about the proposed removal of a particular tree, a white oak tree, noted in the plans as number 33. But in the past few days, I've been able to have some conversations with my colleagues in urban forestry, housing, and planning. And although the proposed removal of the white oak is unfortunate, the HPP staff is supportive of the tree preservation removal plan as being proposed, as it will achieve multiple county goals, such as preserving and adapting these historic buildings, promoting affordable housing and increasing much desired family size units, and that the applicant will be planting 71 trees with their. So, but I do want to point out that the county's urban forester has the opportunity to continue discussions with the project team about the tree preservation and removal plan during the review for the use permit that will be going to the county board. So in conclusion, staff is supportive of the renovation project for section. Sorry, that's 3 minutes longer than I wanted. So, all right.
I can't promise I'll make my presentation shorter. Lauren gave a good overview of kind of what our application is, where we are in the process. Just to zoom out into the total timeline, we filed our form-based code use application back in April. We've been working with county staff on their comments. In the meantime, we met with the DRC and you all in May, meeting with you again in June. As Lauren said, we anticipate going for the Planning Commission and the County Board in July. The Planning Commission, we've been scheduled for the July 3rd meeting. County Board, we should be on their agenda for the July 15th meeting.
Taking a second.
I thought I would just real quick reorient everyone to where we are in the Barcroft area. On the image on your left-hand side, you'll see the all of Barcroft there is outlined in yellow. And the portion of the site that's subject to this application is shaded in red. It's within a portion of what we call Section 3 Barcroft. The whole area has been divided up into multiple sections depending on when the buildings were constructed. And then on the right, you can see the zoomed in version of the project site area. It includes just 5 buildings, buildings 22. And then just to recap our discussions with people on the DRC from May, we talked about the massing compatibility of these building additions on buildings 24, 25, 26. You all agreed that those additions were appropriate. And then we spent a lot more of our time talking about the building 25 sleeping porch addition, what that material should be on that sleeping porch addition, what window configuration there should be, window pattern. There was a consensus that you all preferred the brick option with double hung windows and a 6/6 window pattern. You all directed us to explore some more color options for that piece. So we have those options to show you in a minute. And then we also talked about the new attic vents on the proposed addition. You may recall our first submission had, we were kind of mimicking those existing larger semicircular vents on the existing buildings, and it looked a little disproportionate on the additions, which are supposed to be subordinate to the existing buildings. And you all suggested we do a reduced semicircular vent size. And the architect at the last meeting had also shown you a sketch of a more modern vent shape, more rectangular kind of bars on the building additions. So we explored that as well. We have that to show you today. Well, though we continue to prefer that reduced circular vent size. Historically appropriate with the. And as Lauren said, we'll go over some additional renovation project items tonight, including those basement window replacements, replacing the exterior light fixtures, the building, tree preservation removal, also some repairs for those 2 garage buildings that are on the property, and then those Virginia housing minimum design and construction. And with that, I'm going to hand it off now to Antoine with Foster Harris to walk you through the building design updates and those other items. Antoine, I think you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Well, we can see the building 25 and additions to this building. This is a typical addition. Basically, you can see the 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms together on this building. There are 2 bump outs here. And then also you can see the addition to the building 24, which is a simple addition with 2 3 bedrooms there. On this slide, you can see the 2 brick options for the bump outs. Option number 1 with 2-tone bricks, and the option number 2, which is our preferred option with only 1-tone brick. And the next slides, also the renderings show the same thing. Can we? Yeah. So this one with the renderings, you can see, of course, the bump outs, the brick options, but also the other architectural elements that we spoke about them in the last meetings, and we're not going to bring it up again. The attic vents, and then also the water table, the roll locks that are changed and respond to the comments that we had before in these meetings. Next slide. So this is the same perspective. You can see the one-tone brick material here. Of course, as I said, for different reasons, architectural reasons, we prefer the two-tone bricks. Yeah, on this slide, you can see the change to the attic vent, this semi-circular vent option. Originally, our attic vent had the size of the existing attic vents that you can see on the left side. But we reduced it like 20-25% the size to be more proportionate to the gable, as you see on the right side, basically. And this is also another alternate attic vent that you can see it has a more geometrical, more modern shape. There are like 3 rectangles that gives the impression of a triangle or a gable, basically, So this is the other alternate. We still think that the previous design with the semicircular matches the gables, but this is also our alternate design, basically. It's more modern. Next slide. Speaking about the windows, so we have double pane insulated windows for the basements and also for the bump outs. They are vinyl, and in terms of color, they match the rest of the windows in the building, and they meet all the new energy requirements in terms of SHGC and U value. And they are simulated divided light. So 6/6 again. So most of the windows in these buildings throughout the complex is 6/6. We are proposing the same exterior light than the existing in terms of shape and size and the color. I would say that they are more performant because of the LED light, but they are pretty similar to what they are now. So all of them will be changed.
Well, for those of you who didn't hear this little discussion before, one of the things we wanted to set the stage is, if you haven't been out to the Barcroft site, one of the most compelling components of the site is the lush tree canopy, right? So our goal overall is to minimize disturbance as much as we can, given the proposed construction. So what we started with was a detailed tree inventory of everything on site, the entirety of the site, not just this first section, but the entirety of the site. So we have a record of everything that's there, down to a size of 3 inches, which is the county standard. So on this particular diagram, and again, George Mason's on the right-hand side, South 4 Mile Road's on the bottom, Columbia Pike is, off to the left there, by way of orientation. There's a number of things going on, but every tree on every colored item on this plan is a tree. The green ones are being preserved. The blue ones are part of a large contiguous canopy area that the county has identified as something that they would like to preserve overall, and which we are doing. The red trees are trees that need to come down because of construction, and you can see the orange of the buildings, the little gray boxes in the middle are the proposed additions. So the red are the trees that are being removed due to construction impacts. And then lastly, there are two little trees that are existing that are dead that we're going to replace. And then the yellow ones are invasive species, which we've identified, which we're also going to remove and replace. So at the end of the day, we're taking out approximately 34 trees, I think. We owe, based on the county's replacement requirement, 39 trees, but we've committed to provide 71 replacement trees around the site. And that's going to take the form of primarily canopy trees, similar species mixed to what's out there now, but also we'll be providing some understory trees, which are the lower level flowering trees at building entrances to sort of set up that kind of vocabulary going around. So it'll be a mix, but primarily to replace the canopy that's coming out. So in a nutshell, that's what this diagram is all about. There's a lot of stuff on there. I'm happy to answer any questions. But we can move through the next one, and then we'll see where we go.
Just to clarify, the replacement trees are going to be on this site, right?
Right, the 71 go back on this particular site, not the larger Markov site. So yes, right. The last time we were here, the courtyard was a slightly smaller and slightly less refined animal than you currently see before you. We, again, this area, which is, as you can see, sort of off above building 22 on the far left there, it's one of the only flat spaces on the site. And so we thought that it would be nice to accommodate kind of a smaller community amenity in that space. There really, such a thing doesn't really exist in its current state. So one of the things that we're trying to do is, again, this presentation of the canopy overhead is realistic in that entire thing is shaded, right? It's completely covered by canopy. So any intervention that we do there has to be very, very sensitive. So the proposal is to do, where you can see the parking stripes on the left of the diagram, one or two of those would be striped as an ADA accessible parking space so that we can get to the courtyard area immediately adjacent to the parking area. Right, and it's basically envisioned as being a deck structure. So we're going to be drilling for posts, right? We're excavating for posts, and then sinking, and then basically creating a deck that floats over the existing root zone through there, because the entirety of the ground plane is covered with roots. So we'll basically build a floating deck. The deck comes down the page, as you can see. So that would have accessible grills and accessible picnic tables on that upper level. Then it would turn, go through the wall, and then drop down it's about a 4 to 5 foot drop to that lower rectangular area. And then we would construct another sort of floating deck space down below. The two are tied together, and that one is for those who are able to get down to that lower space. And then we would, we're at least at this point, what we're envisioning is a couple small understory trees planted there and some restoration of the bordering vegetation. But it's all meant to be very, very low impact. Again, we're trying not to disturb the roots as much as we possibly can while still providing an amenity for the community. So that's that.
Thanks, Jeff. Real quick, we'll go over the proposed garage repairs. So in the bottom left-hand image, you can see where those two garage buildings are located just behind building 26 there. Two buildings, they contain about 20 parking spaces today. And like the existing garden apartment buildings, they need a little bit of repair and a bit of refresh. So the applicant proposes to clean and repoint that brick as needed, repair the roofs in certain areas, replace the light fixtures, exactly like they're doing on the existing buildings. They'll also be replacing those existing aluminum garage doors with new aluminum doors that have the same pattern and colors. And then I send it back to Merdad to go over those Virginia housing requirements.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, as said in the beginning of this meeting, as a part of VHDA minimum design and construction requirements, we need to provide cladding to the exterior wood trims and fascia boards. The claddings will be whether vinyl or aluminum with vinyl coating or other materials, similar materials like vinyl. But we also saw in the codes that exceptions might be considered for these buildings because of their historical character. Next slide. Okay, again, as a part of VHDA minimum design and construction requirements, we need to provide canopies to the entrances. So you can see the number of canopies in each building down in that in this slide for every building, and the canopy needs to have minimum requirements like 30 inches of overhang along the front and 12 inches on each side of the door. So we designed two different type of canopies. One is more modern on your left, and we are showing both of them in one slide here. So the one with tiebacks, as you see, which is more modern, and the other one is simple and has, like a very simple design. So can we go to the next slide? Yeah, so this is the option number one, which is more modern. Actually, both of these canopies will be installed above the door trim, so that decorative trim will not interact with the canopy, and one can see the door with its trim. That is, we believe it is very important. So it will be installed above this. So we prefer actually this one. We also explained it in our last meeting with the DRC, but this brings a touch of modernity to the building, and everything else remains same, but this will probably demarcate it from the rest of it. The next slide. And then this one is again above the door trim, that decorative trim that you see for every door, every main door, and with a very simple triangular support. But the width of both of these are 30 inches. That is what is required by the VHDA minimum design and construction requirements. Okay, so we also have a number of back entrances in the buildings. So we don't think that we need to install very, like modern or more expensive canopies. For these, we just go with the option number two, that all of these are in the back of the building and can be seen less. Next slide. Okay, that's it.
I thought I'd conclude summarizing our overall application requests that are going to the county board in July that encompass everything that we've talked with you about in June, in May, and June. So we've submitted that 4.1 to neighborhoods form-based code use permit, and it includes the exterior building renovations, the landscaping upgrades talked about, as well as the proposed building additions. Now, in addition to that request, we were also requesting some modifications from the form-based code. One of those is just to permit the existing setbacks and amount of parking spaces that exist today. It's more of a formality. Then we have 4 other modifications that Lauren went over in that overview. Modifications to the conservation area standards. These modifications would be inconsistent with the Secretary of Interior standards for historic preservation. The two of those modifications are for the basement window replacements and for the rear penetrations for ventilation. So for the basement window replacements, we're requesting modifications so that we can add vinyl windows to match the existing windows on the buildings that have already been replaced with other vinyl windows. And then for the rear openings, they're only going to be on the rear elevations of the site. Those are necessary in order to provide ventilation for the buildings. Then those other 2 modifications are those that relate to those Virginia housing minimum construction design standards. So we will be requesting a waiver from Virginia Housing, as Lauren mentioned. We're hopeful that we might receive such a waiver, but because we won't hear back until the August to October timeframe, we are including this request in our application, showing you all these options. And that's for the vinyl aluminum cladding with trim and for the instrument. So with that, I think that's our presentation. We're happy to discuss everything with you all and answer any questions you may have.
I just had a comment. I know that if the canopies have to be done, that there are two options. One that's sort of modern. These are historic things. We don't need to add features to them. And I feel the same way about fence as well. I think just retain what's there.
And we certainly agree with you on the canopies. We don't want to have to add them to begin with, but
Right,
so you prefer option 2.
Absolutely.
The vents are necessary because of the updates that you all are doing on the interior, which is.
Yeah, the rear penetration.
I'm talking about the attic vents.
Oh, the attic vents. Okay, great.
Yeah, there are some vertical,
Yeah.
center, taller than the two
Right.
sides, and then there was this sort of half.
So you prefer this option, the
Yes,
semicircular size? We do too. That would be our
The smaller one.
the reduced size.
Yeah, the
semicircular.
proportional.
Can I jump in? I think at DRC, we actually prefer vertical. Reason is, that's in addition to the building. Really, Secretary of Interior standards is supposed to differentiate the new addition from the historic fabric. And that just means doing it in part, the multicolor, the brick, and some other thing to distinguish it.
Yeah, I thought the.
Somewhat subtly, those are the reasons.
Yep, I understand. I understand that. I thought the difference. And it's pretty clear when you look at the building. Trim is different. I think they're sufficiently different. That modern. So I'll agree to disagree.
We sort of go around sort of like item by item.
I mean, it seems like everyone's kind of,
Robin, or-
it's up to you all. If you want to go specifically, or if you just want to focus on what you feel strongly about.
8 items.
So if you just
In
want to
that
focus
case,
on that,
let's do that.
okay,
Focus.
taking notes.
May I ask 2 quick questions? For the number of canopies, I counted a total of 36. Is that just on front doors? Is that front and rear? Do you know?
I think, Murdoch, could you speak to that? The 36 number of the canopies, does that include the rear canopies or not?
I can let you,
Yeah, I believe that they include the rear one too.
because I know we only have 4
Yes.
addresses, or excuse me, 3 addresses in building 22, and so. in the front.
Right, okay, and then can you confirm how many light fixtures?
Oh, I thought we did.
Maybe it's in submission.
Submission.
36.
I might have just forgotten.
Might not have made this one.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, we did. I think it's 38.
Okay.
It's in our, they did include the numbers in our HALRB submission, but we weren't able to update the graphic.
That's okay, that's okay.
So 38 lights, and are any of those in new locations that? Nope, 1 for 1. That doesn't include the garages, I would say. It's the only- But there's only
No,
2
on the building.
this garage building. And can you clarify, the DRC asked about the material of the garage?
Yes, so after that meeting, Jerry Lynch went out on site to confirm that the existing garage doors are aluminum. That's what we would be replacing it with.
Are those the original garage doors?
I don't know whether we.
If I had to guess, I would say not, because there are some wood doors on site, but they clearly are not recently replaced.
I don't think so.
There are other locations where they're aluminum
What I
though,
was
so
gonna
it's.
say is, to me, they look like I mean, they sort of don't match the rest. I suspect that
They're probably painted brown.
Yeah, I don't think aluminum garage doors exist at the time that was built. I think they were probably wood, but I wouldn't insist that you put garage doors if you have something that looks more like what was there. That was better than.
Than aluminum.
And I know it doesn't.
To me, that's an ugly aluminum garage door. It could be improved upon if you, I'm not insisting on that, but you might think.
It's sort of that balance of, maintenance and durability
Yes.
versus the
Yeah.
historic, which is what we're facing a
Well,
lot
right.
between Virginia housing and,
Yeah, but I think that's something you all are looking at is finding product types that we could use to replace the doors. So right now, we're geared that towards colors and.
We also may have the original drawings.
Oh, okay.
Depending.
Hey, this is Sarah. I was just going to chime in and say, I was just looking at the drawings. They were wood overhead doors, but the elevations don't provide detail on the appearance. It's just kind of a shaded, solid wood roll-up door. So.
okay, so no possibility of any differentiation with the rectangular facing.
I'll keep looking, but from what I've seen so far, no. It was a pretty simple wood door.
Great, thank you, sir.
They do make fiberglass doors that mimic wood doors now that might be more appropriate.
Is that aluminum?
Might be cost effective.
So I'm really pleased. Hope it works out. All the digging. I asked a question the last time you were here, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I still want the answer. Do you know how many buildings are in your concert?
Oh, I apologize.
I'll work on that while we're talking. I think I can do it.
We do know.
Because these all are, right? These are all these buildings.
Within the form-based code conservation area?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Yes, yeah.
what we're talking about now, they're all within the form-based code conservation area. And I think so there, even the way the conservation area is drawn, there are some portions of buildings that are in and out of the area, which is a little perplexing. Been trying to get a handle of that, but it's quite a few.
Well, if you can, I would like to know which buildings are in and which one.
I mean, I can pull up.
And you don't have to do it.
No, it's a valid question, and I do apologize. You did ask.
No,
It's about 75%, I believe. in the
Yeah, that's what
conservation
they
area.
said. I don't know.
But I don't know. the
Number of
buildings.
buildings, but there are some, having been on.
Really?
Yeah, we weren't.
Yeah, on the east side.
You can see here the. Oh, sorry. I can't. See.
I have another question that I missed last week's meeting, but, and this doesn't really relate to the buildings themselves, but, I understand that the residents, and being removed.
I'll let Alice, David touch on this. No tenant relocation has occurred yet. You are all working on a tenant relocation plan, right?
We've hired Housing to Home, which is they specialize in tenant relocation and relocation. I've been corrected many times by them. It's a temporary on-site transfer, not relocation. No one's being moved off-site. What we will be doing is temporarily relocating folks, or transferring folks, excuse me, to other buildings within the site. Exactly, within Barcroft, and but for the duration of the renovation. No, understood. Yeah. So,
okay.
and we've had we've distributed materials for this first phase, to give residents a background on what's happening, and we will be, there's a minimum 120-day notice period, which we will be following as well. All online with the Arlington County relocation.
Working in concert with our county housing staff too, with this plan, making sure.
Sorry, we distributed materials and we had an in-person meeting. The materials were sort of involved, or follow up FAQs and things like that from the meeting. Sorry, so I know I got distracted before giving a count of the actual buildings, but here's, when they're referring to, you can see some of these buildings bisected by the change in area, but as I think it was Cynthia mentioned, it's about 75%.
And there's about 52 buildings total, 50 buildings.
50.
Were they indicated by the color there? I can't
Sorry, yeah.
imagine.
The ones that are shaded
Yellow.
in the light green are conservation area. Everything that's in the light blue is what's adjacent to conservation area, which is designated for redevelopment.
Okay.
And then everything on the east side there, it's kind of shaded in red. That's in the commercial form-based code there at the corner of South Formal Run and Columbia Pike. So that was not included.
Which part? Can you tell me?
This part here,
The commercial corner.
That's in the commercial form-based code where they didn't have any historic preservation recommendations.
Is that a slide you can share?
District, yes, absolutely. And I think this was maybe in one of the earlier submissions that we included, but absolutely.
That's the, and you know, it's on the regulations, it's from the Columbia Pike.
Yeah, we certainly did create this graphic.
Yeah, we'll send Lauren and others our slides,
Okay.
presentation slides from last time and this time, and you'll include these.
Any other comments about anything that you've seen?
I just had a quick question about the overhang. 30-inch number standing about, is that depth?
Oh, the canopy.
Correct.
For that, is that?
Excuse me, it's the depth, so from the building face to the edge of the canopy. Hard to see here, but
That's how far out it projects.
That's right. That's 2 feet 6 projects out from the facade.
And then the width would just be.
Well, correct. It'll be 12 inches from the side of the door. So that's how we set it up. So we consider the door trim basically, not the opening.
Does everybody sort of agree that option 2 is the preferred option for canopy, or is there a difference in the group? I mean, there can be obviously. I personally prefer option 2 as well. I'm just curious.
But I think it should be consistent throughout the entire.
just for some background there, I don't know if we want to get into that now. There are other types of canopies. I believe we talked about it in the DRC meeting. There are different styles of canopies in Section 7, for example, which was built as part of Phase 2. So those are existing, we'll bring it back to your attention when we renovate that phase. And that, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I don't think those are appropriate for they're much bigger and they're copper, the green. So
And they
not
don't have
necessarily
the
appropriate here.
surround.
Exactly, they didn't have the trim, the beautiful circular trim that we're seeing. So there's reason to not follow that existing protocol, but I hear you.
And also, as far as the brick difference for option 1 and option 2, is there a consensus around that? I mean, I prefer personally, I prefer the option 1. I prefer that option 2. Monotone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two-tone it is.
And the last one we kind of want to get sort of thoughts on it are the vents. I guess I've already heard sort of two opinions on the vents. There's Sandy's opinion and John's opinion.
I'm with Joan.
So it's 2 of us.
I agree with Andy.
Oh, well, break it down.
I like the smaller bed.
Okay.
So now we're 4 and 4.
We have a tiebreaker.
Carmela, do you have an opinion on the vent the semicircular or the three sort of towers.
Huh. I sort of like the semicircular ones, but I think that's because that's what I'm accustomed to seeing.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, and then also, in my opinion, on the brick is again for option one. But I do think though that it would be enhanced by adding soldier course banding that sort of mirrors the banding on the larger volume. Sort of, I mean, not in the same. It could be the same field brick color, but just changing the brick pattern across that banding there. I mean, agree with that.
We'll take a look at that.
Yeah, no, we didn't update the renderings. Definitely.
Thank
How about our Ben? Lights, trees, garage. They talked about canopies.
Comments. I mean, the lights were.
Any other clarifications that would be helpful? How about you?
Ben, I think the only thing I'd like to get clarification on is if, I think we could do this two different ways. If maybe I were to help, maybe drafting up a letter coming from you, Amari, just based on how this discussion went, what some of the points were that the HLRB preferred design overall. Or another option is I can draft something up and that could be included in the staff report that will be issued to county board with the so you can go either way, so maybe think about it. Let me know what you think, unless the HLRB would like to request one option or the other. Letter, or I provide a summary of this in the staff report.
It'd probably be good to have a letter.
I'd agree.
This is a letter to the board.
And your staff.
Yeah, well, it will, yes.
We have to do this.
We would do both. We would technically.
But I
The
think
letter could go to Virginia. Or is that a separate?
I think we should do a separate, just so that we can kind of drive the point home to them, what the HLRB would like to see happen. So, and I would do that too. So thank you.
and I would say sooner rather than later for the letter, so then that time for planning.
Oh,
July
yeah,
3rd.
July 3rd.
Yes.
And our Virginia housing submission July.
What is July 1st?
Our Virginia housing submission. I'm sure we can follow up with, it Okay. doesn't have, I'm sure it's not the end of the world if it's not, but just to
You
keep
can
that.
supplement that.
Yeah, but just to keep that in the back of your mind. Put that in an email to me. I will, yeah. So I don't forget this date. That would be very helpful. Okay. I can get that to you, Amari. Okay. Great. Thank you, everybody. That's it.
Thanks so much for your.
Thank you.
Appreciate you going into the night.
Thank you.
Not fun.
Not done.
I'm so sorry.
Next.
Yeah.
No.
All right.
Next is the, Like the,
That's it. Okay, so this is a preliminary discussion about 4120 41st Street. This was an owner submission. They are applying for local historic district status for their property. Just before I start, can I check to see if Mr. Coussard is on the line with us? No? Lawrence? We received this application a few months ago, and I went to meet with him last month to take a tour of this property. I haven't done a lot of research, just the preliminary application to see if something that you would like us to add to our research queue. So the record says it was constructed in 1933. I don't know that I agree with that. I have some evidence that the first part of the building was built in 1920 and the second part in 19. So before I start, this is the location, and this gives you a context with the other LHDs. So it's 2 down from the Hermitage. So it's on a different street, but they kind of are 2 houses away from each other. And the Hermitage is our log cabin that you've seen a few times in the last few months. It's also not too far away from Walker Chapel and the Fort Ethan Allen Trench. So it's kind of in the middle of a lot of our local historic districts, but it's not in any National Register districts. So this GIS layer includes the National Register neighborhoods, and as you can see, there are none. This is the 1900 map of the county with the locations. This is Mr. Jewell on this land, 1900. So this is the arrow points at the road. It is listed as unpaved in 1936. So remember, the Sanborn fire insurance maps are not comprehensive. They are only of the buildings that paid for fire insurance with Sanborn. So it appears this property did not, by 1936, but I know it did exist.
So Serena?
Yep.
It's on that street that goes, you are coming over Chain Bridge from DC and kept going straight. instead of
Yes.
Going, it's on that road?
Yes, it's like a sudden, instead you take a like your left to stay.
Yeah.
And technically dead ends.
Yeah.
There's no connecting street up to like where the Hermitage
Right.
And there's a path.
Yeah.
It used to go through, I think they.
I walked it.
It's-
Yeah, I walked it.
Up
the other
through to
day.
Chain Bridge. You can ride a bicycle down. You can't, it's still through it.
It's also not included on the 1959 Sanborn fire insurance map, so I guess we didn't pay for insurance with Sanborn. But I do know that. So based on the application from the Pierre Cossard, who is the current owner, he bought it from, he believes, the first owners. So that is, he wrote Judge Ballard. I found him to be called David Ballard in the record, and his wife, Fanny Foy Ballard. David Ballard was a clerk for the USPS until his death in 1946, and then his wife, Fanny Foy, remained in the home until the 80s when it was sold to Mr. Cossard. She is meant to have been a very interesting woman, so I look forward to reading more about her. Apparently, she held seances and musical operatic shows in the home. She performed from a balcony. So this is the approach to the home. There's kind of a long driveway, and then this is as you come up. This house in the rear is actually the original, and then this believed it to be a 1920s construction, and this is believed to be 1930s construction. This is the north-south, like looking south view. This is the entrance between the 2 homes. This is constructed to attach the older home on the left to the new. This is a view of the back of the homes. As you can see, it's raised, and so they believe that when the second part of the house was put into use, this was used for servants, and so they would have had this small space up here and the kitchen down there. This is the rear, showing you the access to that small gable room. This is a view, you keep going around, so that's still that gable room, and so the house is at this lower level.
So is that dormer thing older house?
This part, that's on the newer part. And then this is the current entrance. It's screened in porch. I don't think it was always glassed in. And here's some interior shots. So you would walk in through this door, to this entrance room, which is like the screened porch. And then you walk into this large room, which has these Tudor beams and the balcony whence Fanny Foy is making a vegetarian guest. And this is one of the paneled living rooms. There are a number of beautiful details. There's an inset fireplace here and matching bookshelves. There are a few details. So this is the one of the entrance doors. and it has the glass panel, but it can be removed and replaced with a screen door. So it was, but it is original to the home, as is this door. This is the original little phone nook when there was a landline. And this, interestingly, is the door to the cellar. It is in a cupboard so the applicant believes that maybe this home was used during Prohibition. I'm not sure based on the dates, but there is this odd dungeon door inside the cupboard downstairs behind a wall, and it leads to this wine cellar, which is quite an extensive wine cellar. It has worth of places for wine.
Did you go down?
Did.
Confident you'll figure it out.
Fingers crossed. Well, there's also, I didn't include it here because it's been closed in. There was a pass through to the garage that makes them think that maybe where goods were delivered through from the trucks, so they could be then kept there to be sold on or delivered during Prohibition. Yes. Again, this is the exterior. There's been a number of beautiful additions to the home in terms of the landscaping, but otherwise it's fairly untouched. The owners also bought the property next door because he was worried about development. So let me go back to that just so you can. So, yes, as you see, like this is the road that you're talking about, where most people go. Oh wait, not here. Most people go straight on the. You're talking about like taking that little side road to 41st. And so he owns this, the property with the yellow dot and the one to the left of it, and then the Hermitage appears to touch this street, but it actually doesn't. It faces onto North Randolph Street. And then if you go over, and it's basically at the literal point of Arlington. See, it goes on to the next page. And so, and it is, we do not have another home of this style from this period as a local historic district. And it would be a really interesting addition to the architectural review. I can't say too much about the owners yet, but the fact that there was only one owner prior to the current means that there have been very few changes.
So if you're walking up that hill, it's the first house on the left.
If you're walking up that hill, I don't think so. No, there's one, and there's the second one, and there's a long.
Really? It looks like the first house is from some of that circles.
Let me actually pull up the.
But you're walking right now.
Going to can't open genetics. Right. I'm gonna try to open. Oh no, I can. I'm gonna pull up the Google Street Map.
Wait.
It's okay.
I know. I told you myself this all day too.
I don't know if we're gonna. But me, I don't remember
Oh, in the capital. I deserve zero back.
Oh, you went up?
Okay,
Oh, I
yeah.
didn't see it. It's-
Well, I didn't know about it.
Right up.
I thought I was like. Last time my ears are. Checking out property.
I'm just.
Well,
Speak. It's like, it registers as you are allowed to drop it.
I don't know.
Serena, is it for sale?
No, it's for rent. So,
Okay.
yes, the owner, his mother also owned a house in Arlington, and he's considering pursuing an easement for that. It's an adorable one-story, not too far away from here, actually, but it took me to see the most incredible garden in the back. I mean, just amazing. So we're talking about maybe going to Northern Virginia Conservation Trust for an easement for that. But he has moved into his mother's house, and so he is clearing this out. And yes, there's 1,000 listings online. He is renting, I believe it out, I think, as 2. Yes. Yes, I have not been able to get the street view because as Michael mentioned. I don't know, I guess this is the Bermuda Triangle of, like the Sanborn map, nothing, neither of them, street view, something about it. I mean, so the owner,
The pictures were very helpful.
and the owner has
Yeah.
mentioned, in the application, I don't know if you noticed that, a number of spirits.
Yeah.
So it is
Yes.
possibly,
Did you sense a presence?
I personally didn't, but I maybe I'm not attuned to it. Or maybe they were present that day, but either way, maybe they're working on the maps. Maybe that's why. The maps are haunted.
On that note,
Well, it sounds kind of like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
Why would
yeah.
we-
Would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Oh, sure.
And,
Yeah,
yeah,
just- To our cube?
Yeah, so what do we need to do, direct you to study?
yeah. That's cute. No.
Okay.
You can,
You know you missed it.
I moved to HALRB at 4120 41st Street North. Happiness to the HPP staff's Cuban research.
Second.
Hopefully I'll be bringing you a completed local historic district application for a different.
Later this year.
Yes.
Okay, so, Amari, you made the motion and Dick, you seconded?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Ham, Mr. Laporte,
Yes.
Ms. Lawrence,
Yes.
Ms. Myers, Mr. Turnbull,
Yes.
Mr. Winchell,
Yes,
Mr. Woodruff,
Yes.
and Ms. Ham, are you still on the line? Okay.
Thank you. Now on to the chairman's report. Not much report. But I did want to sort of feel if there are any sort of any questions or concerns or comments about the plan, preservation plan. I know that the feedback ended, I guess, on Tuesday or so.
Okay.
So, are there any questions or comments about that?
Great job, really.
Thank you.
Share with that as well. And with that, I think we'll move on to the staff's.
Okay, so in the essence of time, this will be super fast. So as the chair alluded, the public engagement period closed last night. We also did a series of 15
pop-ups, one open house.
yes, between the middle of April and the middle of June. And we were able to engage with hundreds of Arlingtonians who have otherwise never heard of us or never heard of the plan. So it really was a powerful round of engagement. So we're really pleased about that. And we're still remaining on track to go through public comments that we've received now and bring a final version of the draft plan to the county board this fall. We're targeting doing that in the October and November timeframe. And so to help us get there, we do want to bring the plan back one more time formally to the HALRB for your opportunity to ask any other questions, get clarifications, and then hopefully to get a motion of support for the draft historic and cultural resources plan. And we would like to take advantage of the fact that you're one of the few commissions that meet in August. So we wanted to propose a date for you to make sure that we could do this in a timely manner. Given tonight as a perfect example, we can't predict what else is going to be on the agenda. And so we can do one of two things. We could keep this on the regular August agenda, or perhaps select another evening to have a special meeting, much like we did back in the spring with our consultant. You will just get us this time. Our consultant will not be back in town, but we could do a special standalone meeting. If it takes 30 minutes, if it takes an hour, it can take however long it needs to, but then you won't be burdened with other items that are also on the agenda. So we wanted to propose a meeting date of August 23rd, which is the Wednesday after the regular monthly meeting. But because we need you all to take a motion, hopefully of support, we would need to have an in-person quorum. So is there a preference with those present to either do it on a special meeting on August 23rd or to add this to our regular agenda for the August 16th meeting? Yes.
I would prefer to, really for selfish reasons.
Okay.
I won't be here. So
Okay.
that would just be 2 meetings that I have to call. Just throwing that out. Doesn't, otherwise, I mean, I realize.
I prefer that. I was at that special meeting. But
Yeah, there were only a handful of you there. And so we haven't thought through it yet. I don't think we'll go into the same level of detail. We can get some highlights, but we want to make sure that we can answer any additional questions you all have or any feedback that you want to give us. But we do need a motion or an action, which is why we need to make sure there's a quorum. How are others feeling about a separate meeting versus
I think
on the
it's fine.
regular?
More likelihood that they'll be.
Okay.
Also, August is time where.
I know
people take vacation.
I know it's busy.
Trying to set up a special meeting for the 23rd, especially.
So based on the room, we'll plan to add it to the regular meeting agenda for August 16th. Please mark your calendars now. We will remind everyone who's not here tonight that that's a very important meeting. Speaking of, and the other reason I'll just say too, why we want to do it in August, because when we start going back to the long range planning committee, the planning commission, when we start going to the planning commission, we want to say that we have the HLRB support. So if we can get that in August, then we have that seal of approval to take with us through the rest of the public hearing. And so speaking of quorum, and this is the last point I'd like to make, Serena is working with the county attorney's office on a draft to update the HLRB's bylaws. The past 2 months especially, it's been very difficult to get an in-person quorum. And so we want to be able to revisit how we define quorum in the bylaws. So then we're not relying on every single person. And perhaps it can be less than 7 that would be needed.
Around the table.
Around the table, yes. And so to that end, when Serena sends out a quorum email, please let her know if you can come. If you can't come, then we won't keep bothering you. But if we don't hear from you, sometimes we have to keep bothering you. Tonight was a critical example of that. We needed a 7th person. We got them, but we were up until the last minute trying to confirm whether or not we could do business. And there was a lot of business to do tonight. So we don't want to continue to have to be in that situation. So when the monthly quorum call goes out, please let Serena know so we don't have to keep badgering. And that is everything from staff side.
Thank you.
Is there any word about Wakefield Manor? Invite them to send
I
to
will
us.
defer to Lauren on that.
We did talk to the planner about it, and I think he has to follow up with them, but we're still, they aren't going to the county board until September, so we still have time to get them.
When are they planning on? Better if they went.
I think, I mean, usually the planning commission they don't go to the planning commission. Board, but
It's usually the same month that they go to the board.
Doesn't have to be a request.
Yes, yes.
So there'd be really
planner
two.
right now to
There'd
see
be a
what's
request to
going on.
advertise.
So we hadn't forgotten. They're just not sure of their timeline yet. But we can touch them again.
Anything else for the good of the order? That, meeting is adjourned and good night.
Thank you for sticking with us.
Night.
This was more common.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Kamala.
Of course. We done start.
Recent years,
Uh,
starting at 6:30.
Plan for
So, John,